Chapter 2568. She watched as the scene changed. Finally, a flight of stairs appeared on the surface of the sea. She immediately put away the boat, stepped on the water with the tip of her foot, and gently leaped towards the flight of stairs. When she got close to the scene, it was as if she had crossed a barrier, and she was isolated from the sea behind her. She did not think too much about it. Instead, she walked up the flight of stairs step by step. As she walked up step by step, the flight of stairs behind her gradually weakened until it disappeared. Even the scene became more and more illusory. In the end, it disappeared into the air as if it had never appeared. She followed the flight of stairs all the way to the end. Then she arrived outside a city. When she saw the majestic city gate and the 8 guards at the gate, her eyes flickered with a trace of surprise. Could this be the Penglai Immortal Island? The 8 guards at the city gate were all celestial sages. She found it hard to believe. A dignified celestial sage expert was actually just a gatekeeper. She suppressed the surprise in her heart and slowly walked forward. However, she was stopped at the city gate. Register your information. Submit any of the items listed above as the entry fee. One of the guards pointed at the words written on the wall. Fengjiu looked at it. It said that anyone who wanted to enter the city had to register. Only after obtaining an entry pass could they enter the city. In order to obtain the entry pass, they had to submit medicinal pills or artifacts that were level 4 or above as the fee. Why don't you accept gold coins? Why do you want those items instead? She asked and looked at the guard in confusion. Gold coins? We don't accept gold coins in this place. As the guard spoke, he took out a thick booklet to register and asked for Fengjiu's information. What's your name? She glanced at the booklet and said, Fengjiu. She saw that most of the booklets only had names registered. The rest was blank. Not long after, the guard who had finished the registration said something. He asked her to drip a drop of blood on an identification card and handed it to her. All right, you may enter, the guard said. He did not even look at Fengjiu as he gestured for her to enter. Fengjiu held the item and looked at it as she walked into the city. After entering the city, she realized that there were barriers and formations inside. After entering the city, she felt as if the laws of heaven and earth were pressing down on her. For a moment, she felt uncomfortable. However, what surprised her was that this place was different from other places. Instead, there were cultivators sitting on the ground and bartering with each other. Perhaps it was because not many people came here. Her, of course, of the crowd. Look, it's actually a young man. He looks pretty good. A peak immortal sage sitting on the ground said to the person beside him, his bone age doesn't seem too high. It's a surprise that he was able to come here, said an old man beside him. If he can come here, he's definitely not an ordinary person. Another person said. He suddenly raised his hand and shouted at Fengjiu, who was dressed in a dazzling red robe. Little friend, my stall has a lot of good things. Do you want to come and take a look? Chapter 2569. When she saw the precious herbs casually placed on the stall, she couldn't help but walk forward in a daze. Isn't this the 3-leaf purple heart orchid? This is a 1,000-year-old black-edged jade lingji. When she saw the rare, spiritual herbs outside, she couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Such precious and rare items could only be seen here. Even if she went to collect them outside, she probably wouldn't be able to find them. How do you sell this? She pointed at the 2 stalks of spirit herbs and asked. Her gaze then fell on the other spirit herbs. Every stalk was over 1,000 years old, but they were casually placed on the stall. Seeing this, her heart clenched. What a waste of natural resources. Such good things were actually placed so casually. There wasn't even a proper box or anything. It really made her speechless. Sell? Hee, we don't accept gold coins here. We only barter. As he spoke, he pointed at the words on the side. Looking at the words, Fengjiu was stunned for a moment. Then for these, what kind of items do I need to barter with you? Just as she spoke, before the cultivator could speak, a cultivator beside him laughed loudly. Little friend, since you're new here, it's better if you don't barter for those things. Come, I have some medicine for internal injuries. Take 2 bottles with you, just in case. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. What do you mean? I'll get beaten up here? You won't get beaten up. However, there's someone here who likes to challenge others. Since you're new here, you definitely won't be able to escape. The cultivator laughed loudly, shaking the medicine bottle in his hand. Fengjiu sneered, disapproving. How about I use a bottle of 6-tier pills to exchange for your 2 herbs? 6-tier pills? No, it has to be at least 7th tier. The cultivator said, waving his hand. 7th tier? Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Staring at the cultivator, she said, do you know how many precious spiritual herbs are needed to produce a 7th tier pill? Even if these 2 herbs are precious, they can't be more expensive than the spiritual herbs needed to produce a 7th tier pill. I don't want anything below the 7th rank. The cultivator waved his hand and seemed to want to say something. Suddenly, as if he had seen something strange, he abruptly put away the things on the stall and picked up the large piece of cloth that wrapped the spirit medicine. Then, he turned around and ran away. Fengjiu squatted there in a daze. She looked at the figure that disappeared in the blink of an eye with some astonishment, not understanding what was going on. Run! The city lord's son is here again. With a shout, the people in the surrounding stalls quickly put away their things and ran away. For a moment, chaos filled their eyes. Fengjiu stood up and turned around. On the street, a man was being carried in a large palanquin by 8 people. The palanquin was open on all sides, so one could see the whip in the man's hand. Every time the whip struck the air, there would be a cracking sound. The man's sharp eyes stared at the people running outside, as if he enjoyed the fear they had for him. Not long after, his gaze turned and landed on Fengjiu, who was wearing a dazzling red robe. Stop! With a command, the palanquin stopped. Chapter 2570. The other party's eyes impudently sized her up and down, as if trying to figure out her gender. After a long while, the person withdrew his gaze. She also withdrew her gaze, turned around, and left. This place was somewhat strange. It was an island, but there was a city on this island. Then, where was the immortal ascension stairs that the Tianji elder had mentioned? It seemed that she had to find someone to ask. Stop right there. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, a cold shout was heard. When the cold shout came out, more than a dozen immortal sage level guards quickly surrounded her. Looking at those immortal sage cultivators, a strange expression appeared on her face. In the lower reaches of the continent, it was difficult to find an immortal sage expert. In the upper reaches of the continent, an immortal sage expert was enough to make a family a top-notch family. However, in this place called Penglai Immortal Island, in this city, immortal sage experts were as common as cabbages. They could be seen everywhere. Fortunately, she was already an immortal emperor expert. Otherwise, she would have been shocked to death when she saw these people. Were these people born with such strength? Or did they have such strength for some other reason? It really made her curious. She glanced at the immortal sage guards, then turned around and looked at the man sitting in the palanquin. She asked, "Is something the matter? You look unfamiliar. Did you just arrive?" The man leaned against the palanquin, narrowing his sharp eyes as he stared at Fengjiu. "That's right," she replied. "Where are you from? What are you doing here?" Hearing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. "What am I doing here? Do I have to tell you?" When the surrounding people heard Fengjiu's words, they couldn't help but gasp. Is this kid stupid? How dare he speak to the young city lord like that? He doesn't know the young city lord's methods. He just arrived. How would he know? He probably doesn't know anything about this place. Otherwise, how would he dare to speak like that? "What's your name?" The man sitting in the palanquin asked again, as if he didn't hear Fengjiu's words. Fengjiu turned around and walked forward, not intending to answer his question. However, when the guards saw this, they tried to stop him. Fengjiu waved his sleeve, and a wave of spiritual energy shot out from his sleeve, forcing the guards away. Seeing this, the man narrowed his eyes. At this moment, the registration guard at the city gate quickly came to the side of the palanquin. He whispered, "Young city lord, that person's name is Fengjiu." Fengjiu, the immortal sage, immortal island, and Fengjiu Fun. Therefore, the man walked out of the palanquin and stared at the man who was fighting with the guard. He said in a deep voice, "Feng Jiu, I, Ling Tian, you want to challenge you. If you lose, you will become my slave." As soon as he finished speaking, something flew out from his hand and attacked Feng Jiu. Hearing this, after Feng Jiu repelled those people, she turned around and saw the thing coming at her. Instinctively, she reached out to catch it. However, when she saw the letter in her hand with the word battle written on it, she was stunned. "What is this?" Seeing that he caught the thing, the young city lord couldn't help but smile. He played with the whip in his hand and said to the guard beside him, "Sui, tell him the rules." "Yes." Chapter 2571. Here, anyone can issue a challenge or duel to a cultivator. The duel is based on the acceptance of the challenge letter. What you're holding is a challenge letter from my master. Since you've accepted the challenge letter, there's no room for regret. The surrounding people watched this scene and stared at Feng Jiu. That was a challenge letter. He actually accepted it just like that. This time, even if he didn't want to fight, he had no choice. Challenge letter? Feng Jiu glanced at the thing in his hand and sneered, "Boring." She raised her hand and threw the thing back. When she turned to leave, she saw clouds suddenly rise in the sky. When the muffled thunder sounded, a strong spiritual aura condensed from the word battle fell from the sky and instantly formed a boundary, trapping her in the middle and making her unable to leave. Bang! As soon as the boundary appeared, there was a loud bang. Spiritual aura visible to the naked, I surged on the boundary, and a strong airflow rushed out, causing the surrounding people to involuntarily take a few steps back. The appearance of this boundary trapped Feng Jiu and the young city lord in it, and the guards who were originally in it were bounced back by the power of the boundary. There were only the two of them in the entire boundary. It really appeared. Even if he doesn't want to fight, he has no choice. That's right. Who asked him to accept the challenge letter? You have to know that the young city lord has used this trick to trick many people who have just arrived. That's his bad luck. He just arrived here and met the young city lord, and he was targeted by the young city lord. Who doesn't know that the young city lord likes such good-looking men to be his slaves and guards? Being targeted by him, he can't escape. Listening to the whispers of the surrounding people, Feng Jiu's eyes moved slightly. He raised his eyes to look at the boundary that suddenly appeared, then looked at the man who was also in the boundary and asked, "How did this boundary come about?" The Penglai Deity Island is a world of its own, and in this world, there are rules of the world. This barrier is the rules of the world that were created after I challenged you, and you accepted my challenge. He stroked the whip in his hand as he approached Feng Jiu. However, you don't have to worry. This is not a boundary that can only be broken if one side dies in battle. Instead, it will disappear as soon as the victor is decided. With the laws of the world, this battle will be very fair. Feng Jiu, who vaguely knew what was going on, stared at the man with a strange expression. "So, since I accepted your challenge, I have to fight?" Not bad. The man seemed to be in a good mood, as if he knew that he would win this challenge. Then, shouldn't both sides state their demands before the challenge? She asked again with a confused expression. "That's right," the man replied in a good mood. "If I lose, you want me to be your slave?" She raised her eyebrows and stared at the man who looked to be around 25 years old with a devilish expression. "Yes." He stared at Feng Jiu's beautiful face and replied, "Then what if I win? Can I also make you my slave?" Chapter 2572. Hearing this, Feng Jiu chuckled. "It doesn't matter if I win or not. Since we're going to compete, of course, these things should be noted in advance, right? Also, I don't understand the rules of heaven and earth. If I were to fight you without knowing anything, even if you win, wouldn't it be a little unfair? With your strength, would it be unfair for this young master to win?" Ling Tianyu sneered. With a wave of his sleeve, he threw out a book. "Take it and read it. This book contains the information about the rules of heaven and earth on Penglai, Immortal Island. If this young master wants to win against you, I will make you accept your loss wholeheartedly." Feng Jiu took the book. When she saw the words "Rules of Heaven and Earth" on the book, her eyes flashed slightly. She opened the book and read it page by page, memorizing the contents of the book in her mind. After about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, she closed the book in her hand, closed her eyes, and went through what she had just read in her mind. After a long time, she opened her eyes. Seeing this, Ling Tianyu's deep eyes flashed, and he asked with some doubt, "You're reading like this. Can you remember it?" "More or less." Feng Jiu smiled and threw the book back to him, saying, "Since we're going to compete, we should use words as a guarantee. Isn't there a note in the rules of heaven and earth?" As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and injected spiritual power into her fingers, writing a guarantee in the barrier out of thin air. As her fingers danced, words appeared in the air, accompanied by a spiritual aura that could be seen with the naked eye. It was roughly about a challenge, and the loser would become the slave of the winner. Finally, she wrote her name and condensed a drop of blood. Seeing him like this, Ling Tianyu couldn't help but hesitate. This person actually wrote a guarantee so straightforwardly? Could it be that he wasn't afraid of losing to him? For a moment, his gaze fell on the red-clothed Fengjiu again. Seeing that the other party was only a celestial sage while he was already at the peak of celestial sage, he suppressed the hesitation in his heart and let out a light breath. Like Fengjiu, he wrote his name at the end and condensed a drop of blood. As his drop of blood condensed, the guarantee, written out of thin air, automatically rolled up as if someone was rolling up a scroll. "When I first came here, I actually didn't want to find myself a slave. However, since you've delivered yourself to me, I'll accept you." Fengjiu revealed a harmless smile. However, this smile, in the eyes of Ling Tianyu, made Ling Tianyu's heart sink. "What do you mean?" He frowned as he felt that this person's aura seemed to have changed slightly, making him somewhat unable to see through it. When they first met in the palanquin, he couldn't deny that this person was wearing a dazzling red robe. His outstanding appearance made him have the impulse to take him under his wing, and he also had that thought in his heart and challenged him when he wasn't paying attention. At first, he thought that this was a challenge that he would definitely win, and he thought that he would panic. However, since the appearance of the rules of heaven and earth and the barrier that trapped the two of them, he didn't see a trace of panic or helplessness on this person's face. Instead, it made him feel as if he had dug a hole and jumped into it. Is this person scared out of his wits? Why is he being so ironic? Chapter 2573. Confident. The people around looked at each other and then laughed softly. "I don't think it's confidence. It's more like he's scared silly." The people outside the barrier were watching, laughing, and discussing. However, the atmosphere inside the barrier was a little tense, especially Ling Tianyu. When he saw Fengjiu's evil smile, his eyes widened and he took a step back. Why did this person reveal such an evil smile that made people's hair stand on end? How could such a devilish smile appear on such a handsome man? Suppressing the fear and inexplicable uneasiness in his heart, he held the whip in his hand and gritted his teeth. "Then let me fight you. Let's see what you're capable of." As soon as he finished speaking, he moved his feet and rushed forward. With a swing of the whip in his hand, he attacked Fengjiu in front of him. The fierce air current carried by the long whip streaked across the air. The onlookers outside felt that if the whip landed on the body of the red-clothed man, it would definitely be lacerated. However, to everyone's surprise, when the long whip fell, the red figure flashed like a ghost and dodged Ling Tianyu's attack. At the same time, when his body flashed forward, he stepped on the whip that fell to the ground. With a shift of his feet, the red figure approached Ling Tianyu step by step, forcing Ling Tianyu to abandon the long whip in his hand and quickly retreat. "You're not a celestial sage cultivator." He gritted his teeth and said with a dark face. With just a simple exchange, he knew that this person's strength was not at the celestial sage level, but stronger than him. Damn it, this person was actually hiding his strength, and his strength was even above his. When he thought about how this challenge was initiated by him, and that the loser would become a slave, his face became even uglier. Fengjiu kicked the abandoned whip up and played with it in his hand. When did I say that I was a celestial sage cultivator? You didn't ask me. She chuckled and looked at his ugly face calmly. You were the one who initiated the challenge. Clearly, I didn't want to fight with you, but you came to me. What can I do? As soon as she finished speaking, she swung the whip in her hand. The long whip struck out and accurately hit his arm. This! Ling Tianyu sucked in a breath of cold air and almost jumped up. Damn it! He clearly saw the long whip coming and had already dodged to the side. Why did the whip still hit his body? This! Seeing the young city lord being whipped inside the barrier, the people outside couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and stared inside with a look of disbelief. God, did I see wrongly? That person actually whipped the young city lord? The young city lord, of course, he didn't dodge. Have you been beaten, silly? You're the fool. Didn't you see it? That red coat's strength is above that of the young city master. That's then wouldn't the young city lord be sending a lamb to the tiger's den? The young city lord is a sheep? Usually, when people teach people a lesson, don't they call him a demon? Even demons have a nemesis. That's great. It's best to let this person teach the young city lord a good lesson. Chapter 2574. The young city lord lost and became a slave? Do you think that's possible? If the city lord knew about this, he would be furious. I've never encountered such a situation, but it's obvious that the young city lord has lost. I think that even if the red coat wins, it's not a good thing. A cultivator said in a low voice. What do you mean? Another person asked. Think about it. City Lord Ling is the city lord, an expert at the immortal emperor level. How could he let his son become someone's slave? I think that if the red coat wins, it won't take long for the city lord to kill him. Hearing this, everyone was silent and felt that it made sense. For a moment, they stared at the red-clothed Fengjiu in the barrier and felt that no matter if he won or lost, it would not be good for him. Fengjiu, on the other hand, did not care so much about it. The whip in her hand lashed out at Ling Tianyu like a monkey. Every lash of the whip landed accurately on his body. Every lash was infused with spiritual energy and inner energy. Every lash left a bloody mark on his body. Hiss! After being whipped several times, he tried to get closer to attack, but was unable to do so. He felt that every whip on his body was painful and uncomfortable. Young master! When the guards outside saw the scene inside, they anxiously walked around in circles. However, inside this enchantment, no matter if it was the people inside or outside, they could not enter or leave. Fengjiu, how dare you treat me like this? I won't let you go. Ling Tianyu growled and stared at Fengjiu with fire in his eyes. Fengjiu glanced at him casually and chuckled. What? You can't stand it? If you can't stand it, you can admit defeat. As long as you admit defeat, the barrier will be broken, and I won't whip you anymore. You want me to admit defeat? No way. He gritted his teeth and took out an item from the space and smashed it between the two of them. A thick smoke filled the air and instantly blurred their vision. Looking at the thick smoke, she narrowed her eyes. Her vision was blocked, so she released her divine sense. At this moment, she felt a cold air with killing intent coming from the side. She immediately dodged and scanned with her divine sense, but she could not find Ling Tianyu's location. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew that Ling Tianyu must have used some kind of treasure. Therefore, she braced herself and carefully dealt with it, guarding against any hidden injuries. Whoosh! The blade slashed across, and a sharp and cold aura came out. She faintly felt the blade graze her robe, cutting a hole in her red robe, but it did not hurt her flesh. You don't even dare to show your face? Are you planning to hide and ambush me? Fengjiu chuckled, but her ears were paying attention to the movements around her. It doesn't matter how I beat you. What matters is that I won in the end. Ling Tianyu's cold voice came out and spread in the barrier. He, who had never met a worthy opponent, was defeated by Fengjiu this time. No matter what kind of mentality he had, he could not accept it. He could not accept that he would become Fengjiu's slave after losing. However, Although his voice spread, Fengjiu still noticed that she was walking in the thick smoke. She deliberately slowed down and made a sound. Chapter 2575. Kacha. Clang. Hiss. The crisp sound of bones breaking rang out, followed by his blood-curdling scream and the clanging sound of the dagger in his hand falling to the ground. Because his hand was locked, he was unable to escape, let alone make any other attacks. His entire body was bent over because of his broken hand, and he was half squatting on the ground. Fengjiu waved her sleeve, and a gust of wind came out and blew away the thick smoke, gradually revealing Ling Tianyu's twisted face. "Let go!" He shouted angrily, struggling to fight back, but because his hand was broken, he couldn't get up to attack. Fengjiu sneered, kicked him, and pushed him forward. When he hit the barrier, he bounced back and fell to the ground. A sharp pain came, and he let out a muffled groan. However, he felt even more embarrassed. Looking at the people outside who were pointing at him, he only felt humiliated, and his face was burning. "Do you admit defeat?" Fengjiu asked, slowly walking forward with the whip in her hand. "You want me to admit defeat? Impossible." He gritted his teeth, and a few ice blades shot out from his palm to attack Fengjiu. At the same time, he moved his sleeve, and a dagger slid out from his sleeve into his hand. His body moved, and he quickly rushed forward. Whoosh! Fengjiu raised her eyebrows when she saw the ice blades flying towards her. She swung the whip in her hand and shattered the ice blades with a snap. When she saw the man holding another dagger in his hand, she raised her eyebrows and chuckled. "I didn't expect you to have so many daggers." As soon as she finished speaking, she kicked the crescent moon dagger that Ling Tianyu dropped on the ground. She condensed spiritual energy in her palm, and with a change of her aura, she used her spiritual energy to control the crescent moon dagger to attack. The dagger carried a murderous aura as it flew towards his face. No matter how good his temperament was, he couldn't help but be startled at this moment. He instinctively dodged the attack of the crescent moon dagger, but his cheek was still scratched by the airflow from the dagger. He cried out in pain and instinctively covered his face that had been cut by the saber aura. He could only feel warm blood dripping from his cheeks, seeping through the gaps between his hands and dyeing them red. "You disfigured me." His eyes were red as he stared at Fengjiu like he was about to go crazy. "Is there? I wanted to aim the blade at your neck, but you dodged it. Since that's the case, why don't we go somewhere else?" She revealed a strange smile and controlled the crescent-shaped dagger in her hand. The dagger turned around and attacked his crotch. Hiss! This person is crazy. When the onlookers outside saw this scene, they cried out in shock. One must know that City Lord Ling only had one son. If he really died without any descendants, it would be strange if he could leave alive. When the guards saw this scene, they were so frightened that their legs went soft. Some of them hurriedly ran back to report this matter to the city lord, while others stood guard outside and shouted, "Young lord, quickly get out of the way." Seeing the dagger coming at his crotch, Ling Tianyu's face turned pale, and he cried out, "Fengjiu, stop it! Quickly stop! Damn it!" As he shouted, he jumped and dodged. When the dagger narrowly passed through his crotch, the biting cold chi of the dagger even cut a hole in his pants, and a cold wind blew in, causing him to involuntarily shiver. Chapter 2576. Almost as soon as he said that, the crescent moon blade that was heading towards his crotch also stopped. With a wave of his hand, Fengjiu threw the blade to the side. At the same time, the barrier that trapped the two of them also broke as a ray of light shot into the space between Ling Tianyu's eyebrows. "Young master!" Those guards hurriedly ran forward to help him up. If you had admitted defeat earlier, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. Fengjiu glanced at the man who was sitting on the ground, surrounded by a group of guards. With a chuckle, he turned around and walked away. Seeing him turn around and leave, Ling Tianyu couldn't help but be startled. Seeing that figure leave step by step and disappear from his sight, he couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Could it be that this person forgot that the loser would have to become the loser's slave? "Master, Are we just going to let him go? A man next to him asked. Hearing this, his face darkened and he asked angrily, What else can we do? You want your master to be his slave and be ordered around by him? This subordinate didn't mean that. That person hurriedly said and lowered his head at the same time. In the city lord's mansion, the city lord who heard the news stared at the guard and asked in a deep voice, You're saying that Tianyu challenged someone and lost? Yes. When this subordinate rushed back to report the news, young master, he was almost unable to fight back under that person's attack. The guard lowered his head and said, after hesitating for a moment, he carefully raised his head to look at the city lord and finally said, Moreover, young master, and that person established the rules of heaven and earth. The loser has to be the slave of the winner. Hearing this, the city lord's face darkened. Ridiculous. Take me there immediately. Yes. The guard hurriedly replied and quickly led the way. However, just as they were about to rush over, they met a group of people who were returning with their tails between their legs on a street outside the city lord's mansion. Seeing his son return with injuries all over his body, especially with an additional mark between his eyebrows, his heart sank and he asked, You lost? Hearing this, Ling Tianyu's eyes flashed slightly, and with a dark face, she replied in a muffled voice, and her gaze swept over the guard beside her, and her eyes were filled with shame and anger. When the guard saw the anger in his eyes, he couldn't help but lower his head and said in a low voice, Young master, this subordinate was worried about you, so I rushed back to report to the city lord. Acting on your own initiative, stand down, he shouted with a dark face, staring at the guard with an unfriendly gaze. When the guard saw this, he quietly retreated. You still have the face to talk about others? You've been fooling around outside all day, and now you've stirred up trouble, haven't you? City Lord Ling glared at him in disappointment and asked, Where's the person who won against you? Ling Tianyu didn't look at her father. Instead, she turned her head to the side and said, Let's go. As soon as he heard this, he felt his blood boil. He shouted angrily, Gone? You're letting him go just like that? Don't you see the mark on your forehead? Imprint? Ling Tianyu was startled. As if she had thought of something, she touched her forehead. Right, the loser had to be a slave. At that time, both of them had condensed a drop of blood, so the rules of heaven and earth would naturally brand the imprint on the loser's body. Chapter 2577. When he regained his senses, he saw the anger on his father's face and walked in. After he went in, the city lord took a deep breath with a dark expression and ordered the guards, You guys have seen that person. Go, bring some people and invite him to the city lord's residence after you find him. Remember, invite him, don't be rough with him. Yes, everyone hurriedly responded. The city lord then walked in with his hands behind his back, his brows tightly knitted, feeling that this matter was a little troublesome. Slave? How could he think of such a thing? It was one thing to act recklessly normally, but today he actually dug his own grave. The dignified city lord's young master became someone's slave? Even if he didn't care about his face, he still had to care about his face and reputation. At the same time, Fengjiu was walking in an alley, looking at the small stalls that moved from the main street outside to this alley to sell. Because of that battle, the people nearby all recognized her, so when they saw her enter, some smiled and greeted her, some praised her for being so powerful, and some told her to leave quickly. She stopped in front of the spiritual medicine stall that she had her eyes on, stared at the spiritual medicine on display, and asked the cultivator, How about I exchange these with crystal stones? Crystal stones? The cultivator was startled, then shook his head. I don't want crystal stones. I want to exchange this for something fixed, a fourth-grade inner core. Hearing this, Fengjiu was also startled. Fourth-grade inner core? She rummaged through her space and finally took out a bottle. I don't have any fourth-grade inner cores. Only a sixth-grade inner core. What? Sixth grade inner core? The cultivator who was originally sitting jumped up. His eyes widened as he stared at the bottle in Fengjiu's hand. Yes, sixth grade. She poured out the inner core from the bottle and placed it in the palm of her hand. When the cultivator reached out to take it, she retracted her hand and kept the sixth grade inner core. Trade, Trade. I'll trade this spiritual medicine with you. The cultivator grinned and quickly handed the spiritual herb to Fengjiu. At the same time, he stared at the bottle in Fengjiu's hand. This stock of spiritual herb is not much to exchange for a 4th grade inner core, but if you want to exchange it for my 6th grade inner core, you'll probably have to give me all the spiritual herbs you have here. Fengjiu's lips curled up as she narrowed her eyes. All of them? This. He hesitantly looked at the elixirs in his stall, then looked at the bottle in Fengjiu's hand. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I'll get it to you." Seeing this, Fengjiu tossed the medicine bottle in his hand to him. At the same time, with a wave of his sleeve, the dozen or so spiritual herbs were all stored in the space. Holding the grade 6 inner core like it was a treasure, the cultivator grinned and asked, "Young master, if you need more elixirs in the future, you can come find me. Every half a month, I come here to set up a stall. The elixirs I bring are all aged, and no one in these streets has elixirs that can compare to mine." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, "All right, I'll come find you if I have the chance." She paused, then asked, "All right, I want to ask you something." "What is it?" The cultivator was very excited to receive the grade 6 inner core, so he did not leave just like that. Chapter 2578. You don't know? The cultivator was slightly surprised when he heard this. He sized him up and said, "I saw that you even defeated the city lord's son. You must have an extraordinary background. How could you not know anything about the Peng Lai Immortal Island?" He paused, as if he did not expect Fengjiu to say anything. He continued, "Let me tell you this. This place is a world of its own. Hence, you have seen the laws of heaven and earth. Also, the Peng Lai Immortal Island is divided into 4 cities. The city lord of each city is a powerhouse of the immortal emperor level. As for the immortal ascension stairs, no one has seen it before." "No one has seen it before? How could that be?" Fengjiu was slightly surprised. "Indeed, no one has seen it before. The Peng Lai Immortal Island is said to be an island, but no one knows how big it is. Even the battle between the 4 cities that we know of is only a corner of the island. The strange thing about the Peng Lai Immortal Island is that there are some places where there are no people and no roads. However, if you go there, you'll not be able to walk far. At least, no one has been to the other places. Most people only live and cultivate in the 4 cities. As for the immortal ascension stairs, it is said that it is on the Peng Lai Immortal Island. However, as for where it is, I really do not know." Hearing this, Fengjiu frowned. "Does no one in the city know about it? No one has seen it before?" "That might not be the case." The cultivator grinned. "I don't know about the others, but the city lord's son that you defeated just now should know." "Okay, I got it." She nodded and turned to leave. After walking around the city, she used pills to exchange for many things. She realized that there were not many alchemists here. Level 6 pills were already rare. Just as she was about to find a place to rest, a group of guards quickly surrounded her. "Young Master Feng, the city lord invites you," one of them said. "City lord?" Fengjiu's eyes flashed, then he smiled. "Lead the way." The city lord's son had lost to her, so the city lord would definitely come forward. It all depended on what he wanted to do. Those people did not expect Fengjiu to be so easy to talk to. They were stunned for a moment before they reacted. "Please come with us," one of them said, and gestured for her to enter the city lord's mansion. Fengjiu followed them, but he was not worried. The city lord's son had become her slave. She remembered that when the barrier was broken, a ray of light had shot into the space between his eyebrows, leaving a mark there. As such, his life was already in her hands. His son's life was in her hands. So how could the city lord use force against her? Of course, he would have to treat them with respect and persuade them with kind words. Thinking of this, the corners of her lips curled up slightly. She followed those people all the way until they arrived at the main hall of the city lord's mansion. Ling Tianyu, who was applying medicine in the courtyard, suddenly stood up and exclaimed, "What? My father actually invited him here? That Fengjiu actually dares to come here? He must be tired of living." Yi, who was applying medicine at the side, said in a low voice, "Master, the city lord invited Fengjiu here. He probably wants to remove the mark on Master's body. Just now, the city lord sent someone over to tell Master to go to the main hall after applying medicine. Ling Tianyu's expression was ugly. She frowned and stared outside. For a moment, she did not speak. No one knew what she was thinking. Chapter 2579. Fengjiu sat in the hall and drank tea, allowing the guards and maids in the hall to look at her. It was time to eat, and she hadn't eaten yet. She was hungry, so she said to the guard standing at the side, "Give me something to eat. I'm hungry." She said it naturally, as if she was in her own home, without the slightest bit of restraint or nervousness. After hearing her words, the guard was stunned for a moment. Then he responded and retreated. She waited while drinking tea. After drinking 2 cups of tea, she still didn't see the figure of the mayor. Obviously, the other party wanted to leave her here to show her who was the boss. However, after drinking 2 cups of tea, Feng Jiu began to eat the desserts that were served to her. The city lord had not yet arrived, but the young city lord had arrived first. As soon as he entered the hall, he saw that there was only the red-clothed man in the hall. While eating snacks, he asked with a dark face, "Didn't you leave? Why did you come back?" Feng Jiu glanced at him. "Who said I wanted to come back? Your father asked someone to invite me here." As he said that, the corner of his mouth hooked up, revealing an evil smile. "You're my slave now." "Why? A slave doesn't have to salute when seeing his master." Hearing this, Ling Tianyu's face changed. He couldn't help but take a step back and stared at Feng Jiu defensively. "This is my home. Don't go too far." "Am I going too far?" "I don't think so." She chuckled and picked up a snack to eat, while saying, "Come, pour me some wine." Almost as soon as Feng Jiu said that, Ling Tianyu couldn't help but walk over. When he resisted in his heart, he felt as if thousands of knives and tens of thousands of insects were drilling in between his eyebrows. It was so uncomfortable that it made him go crazy. "What are you standing there for? Bring me some wine," he calmly shouted at the guard beside him. When the guard saw that, he hurriedly ordered someone to bring the wine. After the wine was served, Ling Tianyu personally poured the wine for Feng Jiu, waiting on the side like a servant. After hearing the news, the city lord strode towards the hall. When he saw the scene in the hall, he almost fainted from anger. He took a deep breath before walking forward. His sharp eyes were scrutinizing and sizing up the red-clothed man in red who had a free and easy demeanor. Was this the person who defeated his son? His gaze swept over her with his divine sense. He saw that this person actually had the strength of an immortal emperor. Moreover, her aura was restrained. She wasn't simple at all. From the looks of it, there was a reason why his son lost. While he was sizing up Feng Jiu was sizing him up as well. She glanced at him calmly and saw that he had a powerful aura. Moreover, he did not retract his aura even after entering this place. It was obvious that he wanted to intimidate her. However, she was Feng Jiu, not just anyone. Under the powerful aura of the other party, she was still the same as before. Her expression did not change at all. "Is this young Master Feng?" the city lord asked as he walked in. "That's right," Feng Jiu bowed and said, "I wonder why the city lord has invited me here." "Oomph, you're asking the obvious." Ling Tianyu snorted coldly in his heart. He had a lot of complaints in his heart, but he didn't dare to say anything. Who told him to lose to Feng Jiu? No matter how unwilling he was, he could only stand there and pour wine for him. Chapter 2580. You want me to release him from his slave contract? So you already know that he's my slave? Feng Jiu glanced at the city lord with a half-smile. Hearing this, the city lord looked at his son, who had his head lowered. He paused for a moment, then said to Feng Jiu, "Today's matter is my son's fault. Please don't hold it against him. After all, he's my son. If word gets out that he's your slave, wouldn't I become a laughingstock? So please be magnanimous. As long as you're willing to release him from his contract, I'll definitely compensate you." Feng Jiu chuckled. "How do you want me to believe that I won't be killed if I release him from his contract?" Hearing this, the city lord's expression changed. He looked deeply at Feng Jiu and said, "Don't worry, young Master Feng. As long as you release my son from his slave contract, I'll make the decision." This matter will end here. I won't make things difficult for you. Feng Jiu smiled and shook her head. No, that's not enough. I don't dare to release him from his contract like this. She smiled and stood up. This place has the rules of heaven and earth. If you want me to release him from his contract, I can do so, as long as the city lord and the young city lord promise that you won't cause trouble for me. Then I'll release him from his contract. She paused and glanced at Ling Tianyu, then said to the city lord, but before that, I have something I'd like you to tell me. Hearing this, the city lord frowned. He looked at Feng Jiu for a moment, then asked, what does young Master Feng want to know? Please speak. Feng Jiu stood up and walked slowly to the city lord. I want to know where the immortal ascension stairs to Penglai Island is. The city lord was stunned. His face was full of astonishment. What? The immortal ascension stairs? His gaze shifted, and he stared at Feng Jiu for a long time, then asked, why do you want to find the immortal ascension stairs? You just need to tell me where I can find the immortal ascension stairs, she said slowly. Hearing this, the city lord smiled and said, actually, the immortal ascension stairs is said to be on Penglai Island, but almost no one here has seen it. He paused, then smiled. It's said that the immortal ascension stairs is a bridge that leads to another world. It's also a place to test a person's ability. However, I've been here for so long, but I've never seen the immortal ascension stairs, nor do I know where is on Penglai Island. You immortal ascension stairs, she didn't quite believe him. Hee, it's not that I don't want to tell you, young Master Feng. It's just that I really don't know. I've only heard that the stairway of immortality leads to another world. I also know that the stairway of immortality has many tests. He looked at Feng Jiu with an inexplicable look in his eyes. I heard that young Master Feng has just arrived in the city. How did you know about the immortal ascension stairs on Penglai Island? If that's the case, then didn't this expert tell young Master Feng where the stairway of immortality is? Chapter 25:81. For a moment, she was silent. She sat there quietly with her brows furrowed. Young Master Feng? Young Master Feng? Seeing Feng Jiu sitting there quietly, the mayor called out to him twice. Only when he came back to his senses did he say, I wonder if young Master Feng has any other questions. If there is, I will tell you everything I know. Hearing this, Feng Jiu looked at him and said, if that's the case, then I would like to ask if you can let me search for information in the City Lord's Mansion's library. Hearing this, the mayor paused for a moment. He looked at Feng Jiu with some hesitation, then looked at his son. Finally, he said, as long as young Master Feng agrees to break the contract, then I can let young Master Feng stay in our City Lord's Mansion's library for 3 days. However, after 3 days, regardless of whether young Master Feng finds the information you want or not, you will have to leave. Seeing that his father had agreed to this request for him, Ling Tianyu couldn't help but move his mouth. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Should he open his mouth and refuse? Then let him be Feng Jiu's slave? Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth and glared at the red-clothed Feng Jiu with an unfriendly gaze. He snorted coldly and turned his head away. Feng Jiu didn't pay attention to Ling Tianyu. After hearing the mayor's words, he smiled and said, Okay. Thus, the mayor and Ling Tianyu made an oath to the heavens in front of Feng Jiu. They promised that as long as Feng Jiu broke the slave contract, they wouldn't pursue the matter. Furthermore, they wouldn't send people to assassinate him or cause trouble for him. Finally, Feng Jiu erased the slave mark on Ling Tianyu's forehead and broke the contract between the two. Seeing this, the mayor let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Young Master Feng, you can rest here tonight. Tomorrow morning, I will send someone to bring you to the library. Then I'll have to trouble you. Feng Jiuqiao bowed to the city lord, and his etiquette increased. I won't disturb you. The city lord smiled and called for the steward to bring Feng Jiu to rest. After Feng Jiu left, Ling Tianyu came to his father's side and asked in a muffled voice, Father, are we just going to let it go? The city lord, who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back, glanced at him, his dark face filled with anger. If it weren't for you running amok outside all day long and causing trouble, why would I, the dignified city lord, need to lower my voice to beg someone? He even allowed him to read books in Tibet for 3 days? You're the one who caused all this trouble, and now you're even saying that you won't cause trouble for him? Are you going back on your word? He stared at him with a dark expression and said in a deep voice, I'm warning you, you'd better obediently stay at home and cultivate. If I find out that you're going out to cause trouble again, I'll break your legs. After warning him, City Lord Ling flung his sleeves and walked out, leaving Ling Tianyu standing alone in the hall. Feng Jiu was arranged to stay in a courtyard in the City Lord's mansion like a guest. However, everyone in the City Lord's mansion knew that it was their young City Lord who lost to him, so the City Lord had to invite him to his home. If it weren't for the City Lord, the young City Lord would probably have become his slave. Thinking that this red-clothed man was so strong at such a young age, everyone in the City Lord's mansion was secretly sizing him up. Chapter 2582. Feng Jiu did not stand on ceremony as they stayed in the Chancellor's manor. Instead, he asked the servant to prepare a few dishes and some wine before eating in the courtyard. At this moment, Ling Tianyu walked in from outside. Seeing how carefree Ling Tianyu was in the Chancellor's manor, Ling Tianyu could not help but snort. You sure are carefree. You almost treat my house as your home. Feng Jiu glanced at him. What? Does the young Chancellor also want to have a drink or two? Ling Tianyu's face darkened as he stared at Feng Jiu. In a deep voice, he asked, Feng Jiu, who exactly are you? Why are you looking for the immortal ascension stairs? Hearing this, Feng Jiu chuckled. She played with the wine cup in her hand and watched as the wine in the cup swayed along with her movements. She smiled. Don't you already know who I am? As for why I'm looking for the immortal ascension stairs, that's my business. It has nothing to do with you, right? Her voice paused as her clear eyes landed on him. She smiled. Furthermore, the contract on you has already been dissolved. Why are you still hanging around in front of me? I'm hanging around in front of you? His voice raised slightly, as if he was a little beast whose tail was stepped on. He immediately retorted, That's because you're staying in my house. I'm not hanging around in front of you. Now that I'm a guest in your manor, is this how you treat your guest when you're the young Chancellor? She raised her eyebrows and looked at him. I wonder if the Chancellor knows that the young Chancellor is here. Hearing this, Ling Tianyu froze. He glared fiercely at Feng Jiu and snorted coldly. Then, he turned around and left. Seeing this, Feng Jiu smiled and did not bother about him. After eating, he walked around the courtyard for a while and asked someone to prepare a bath. After that, he went to bed early. At night, in the Chancellor's manor, the Chancellor came to the back of the mountain alone. After passing through the enchantment and array, he entered a cave and bowed respectfully. Father, come in. In a stone room in the cave, there was an old man sitting cross-legged in cultivation. When he heard the noise outside, he opened his eyes and looked outside. After hearing the voice, the city lord walked in and came before the old man. Father, please forgive me for disturbing you in the middle of the night. Is something the matter? The old man asked in a deep voice. Today you did something foolish outside. City Lord Ling explained the matter briefly. In the end, he said, the main thing is, I heard Feng Jiu mention the immortal ascension stairs and was a little surprised. He paused for a moment before continuing. I remember my father saying that the stairway of immortality leads to another world. Only those who have reached the immortal emperor realm have the right to climb the stairway of immortality. I also remember my father saying that the stairway of immortality has a total of 99,999 steps. Every step is filled with danger and unpredictable changes. Hearing this, the old man stroked his beard and asked, Who is this Feng Jiu? How does he know about the stairway of immortality? The city lord thought for a moment and said, This person is dressed in red and has a handsome face. He looks to be around 20 years old. Although he hides his aura, I can still sense the aura of a superior. I only know that this person is unfathomable and extraordinary. However, I know nothing about his background. Chapter 2583. Yes, Your son agreed to let him enter the library to read for 3 days. As he spoke, he continued, there are more than tens of thousands of books in the City Lord's mansion. In 3 days, he won't even be able to find any information about the immortal ascension stairs, much less read. I understand. You can go back first. I will talk to him in detail tomorrow. He waved his hand, gesturing for him to leave. Yes, City Lord Ling replied, bowed, and left. The cave became quiet again. Then the old man who was originally sitting cross-legged walked out with his hands behind his back. He looked outside and muttered, Fengjiu. The next morning, Fengjiu woke up at daybreak. After washing up and eating a simple meal, she went out and asked the servant to bring her to the library. After passing through many courtyards, they arrived at the tightly guarded treasury. She dismissed the maids and walked forward alone. The guard outside seemed to have been briefed. When he saw her walk up, he did not stop her. Instead, he helped her open the door and let her in. When the door closed again with a creak, her gaze also fell on the collection of books inside. Unexpectedly, as soon as she entered, she saw that the collection of books were neatly arranged. The number of books was so large that it made her feel a little surprised. I didn't expect there to be so many books here, she muttered. Then she heard a voice. This is the collection of the Ling Mansion's ancestors. There are tens of thousands of books here. They are all rare treasures. An old man's hoarse voice sounded. Fengjiu turned her head slightly and saw an old man dressed in gray standing on a chair, wiping the books on the bookshelf. There was an old man here? She did not notice him at all. If he did not speak, she would not have noticed that there was someone here. Was this old man's cultivation level too high? Or was she too careless? Senior, are you the manager of this library? How many years have you been here? She looked at the old man and asked. Only then did the old man, who was the Ling family's ancestor, stop what he was doing and look at Fengjiu, who was standing there in a red robe. When his gaze landed on her, his eyes flickered and a hint of surprise flashed through his heart. However, he hid it very well. Even someone as astute as Fengjiu did not notice it. He retracted his gaze and put down the cloth in his hand. He picked up a feather marble and swept it across the books that he could not reach. His old voice slowly said, It's been many years. As for how many years, I can't remember. Hearing this, Fengjiu walked up and asked again, Then, Senior, have you organized any books about the immortal ascension stairs? Immortal ascension stairs? The elder looked at Fengjiu again and said meaningfully, That place is not a place where ordinary cultivators can go. You are so young. Why do you want to find the stairway of ascension? Senior, do you know about it? I do. The old man got down from the chair and said, On the Penglai Immortal Island. As long as you are an old cultivator, you will know about it. He walked out slowly and murmured, Immortal ascension stairs, immortal ascension stairs. One step to immortality, 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 one step to immortality. Chapter 2584. What did that mean? What did the old man's words mean? Why did it sound so mysterious? She pondered deeply, but she couldn't figure out the meaning of those words. Then, she remembered that the old man had left, and she didn't even have the time to ask him about the stairway of immortality. She sighed softly and collected her thoughts. Then, she focused her attention on the library in front of her. In 3 days, among the thousands of books, would she be able to find any records about the stairway of immortality? She calmed herself down and picked up a book from the bookshelf beside her to read. Then, she picked up a few books from each level of the bookshelf beside her to read. Gradually, she realized that the arrangement of the books here was different. Thus, as she read, she divided the books according to their arrangement. However, this library had a total of 3 levels. To find information on all 3 levels in 3 days was really not an easy task. She shook her head and sighed softly. Only now did she understand why the city lord had agreed to her request to enter the library. If there was no one to guide her, it would be difficult to find a book about the stairway of immortality, much less a record about the stairway of immortality from Penglai Immortal Island. While she was looking around, the old man who had left the library went back to his cave. There, City Lord Ling had been waiting for a long time. When he saw him return, City Lord Ling went to welcome him. "Father." The old man looked at him and said, "Come in." As he spoke, he walked into the cave. The city lord followed behind him and saw him sit down inside. He poured a cup of tea for him and asked, "Father, how was it?" The old man picked up the teacup and took a sip before saying, "This Fengjiu is a woman." "What? She's a woman?" City Lord Ling was slightly startled, and his voice could not help but rise slightly. After seeing his father's gaze, his heart froze, and he hurriedly suppressed the shock in his heart. He tried his best to keep his voice steady as he asked, "Father, is Fengjiu really a woman? How could a woman's movements not have the slightest bit of femininity? Instead, she was carefree and unrestrained like a man. Could it be that he saw wrongly?" However, he only dared to whisper this in his heart. He didn't dare to ask his father. Not only is she a woman, but she also has the profound spiritual body, which is rarely seen in 1,000 years. The old man stroked his beard and said slowly, "Her cultivation has already reached the peak of the immortal emperor realm. No wonder Tian Yu is not her opponent. Furthermore, unlike Tian Yu's advancement from consuming pills, this Fengjiu's cultivation is very solid. It's obvious that she has improved her strength step by step. Even people of the same cultivation." Hearing his father's words, the city lord felt a loud bang in his head. This isn't a joke, right? It should be known that although there were many immortal sages on Penglai Immortal Island, most of them had achieved their strength through the use of strange fruits and pills. They were different from those cultivators who had risen their strength step by step. Chapter 2585. For someone like her, you can only be on good terms with her, not bad terms with her. The elder was deep in thought. He looked at him and said, "You have to tell Tian Yu not to do anything rash. A person like her has a bright future. We cannot afford to offend her." Hearing this, the city lord gulped and hurriedly replied, "Yes, father, I understand." The elder sighed. If it wasn't for the fact that Tian Yu had a conflict with her, we could have tried to let him pursue her. If we could make her a member of our Ling family, she would definitely be a great help to our Ling family. Unfortunately, he shook his head with a look of regret. Hearing this, the city lord's heart trembled. He thought about how his son had almost become Fengjiu's slave. Even if Tian Yu was willing, Fengjiu probably wouldn't like him. He couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. There weren't many people who could receive such praise from his father. It was a pity that the opportunity had slipped away in front of him. The city lord thought for a moment, then asked, "Father, when she comes out of bed in 3 days, should we let her stay for a few more days? Should we build a good relationship with her? Since she's looking for the immortal ascension stairs, why would she stay here for long? When she comes out of Tibet, I'm sure she'll leave immediately," the elder said slowly. He paused, then continued, "Anyway, as long as you don't force anything and don't get on bad terms with her, it'll be fine. Then the immortal ascension stairs." He looked at his father carefully and asked, "Should we tell her where the immortal ascension stairs are?" Hearing this, the elder's eyes flickered. He said, "If she's fated with the immortal ascension stairs, she'll find it. Furthermore, even I couldn't climb the immortal ascension stairs back then. She's so young. Even if she finds it, what can she do?" "Yes, I understand. Then I'll go back first." The city lord bowed and left. After watching him leave, the elder returned to his room to continue cultivating. The city lord, who was walking towards the main house, met his son halfway. Seeing him standing there, he said in a low voice, "Didn't I tell you to cultivate? Why did you come out again?" "Father, did you go to find grandfather? Why are you looking for grandfather? Is it because of Fengjiu?" Ling Tianyu looked at him and asked. She hit the nail on the head. City Lord Ling glanced at him and said, "That's right. I went to find your grandfather and told him about the troublesome things you've been doing recently. I originally wanted to pay you a visit, But since you're here, then I'll tell you that your grandfather has ordered you not to make things difficult for that Fengjiu. She's not someone to be trifled with. Hearing this, Ling Tianyu frowned. Why? Could it be that father and grandfather are afraid of a mere brat? Just do as the elders say. You just need to know that we won't harm you. He said in a deep voice, Go back. Remember what I said to you. With that, he walked away. Looking at her father walking away with his hands behind his back, Ling Tianyu's eyes were filled with doubt. She thought to herself, what is the background of that kid? It was fine if her father said that, but why did her grandfather say that as well? Thinking about how Fengjiu was in Tibet and her father had ordered her to leave, she could only return to her courtyard. Chapter 2586. The city lord had sent someone to ask her if she wanted to come out for dinner, but she had rejected them all. Actually, for cultivators of their level, it would be fine even if they didn't eat for 10 days or half a month. If they enter meditation, they would be fine even if they didn't eat or drink for a few years. Moreover, there was plenty of food in Fengjiu's space, so she wouldn't say that she wanted to go out for dinner at this time. After searching for books for the whole day and reading for the whole day, in the dead of the night, the moonlight shone through the window above. The gentle light made her feel a little sleepy. She yawned, stretched her back, and slowly walked in the room. In this room, there were luminous pearls on all sides, but the back of the bookshelves was blocked, so the light couldn't reach them. She slowly walked up to the second floor and walked around. She casually picked up a few books to read and saw that some of the high-level cultivation technique books had been sealed and couldn't be opened. I see. So some of the books have been sealed. This way, even if I wanted to read them, I wouldn't be able to see the contents. She smiled and didn't find it strange. After all, if there weren't any seals, then wouldn't she have been able to read all the high-level cultivation technique books? She put the sealed book back and walked up to the third floor. Just like the second floor, there were some books that could be flipped through, but there were some that couldn't be read. After walking around, she walked to the first floor. She hadn't even finished reading the books on the first floor in a day. Could she really find clues about the immortal ascension stairs in 3 days? She came to the stairs of the first floor and sat down. She closed her eyes. Suddenly, the words that the old man said during the day echoed in her mind. The immortal ascension stairs. The immortal ascension stairs. 1 step to the immortal ascension stairs. 1 step to the immortal ascension stairs. 1 step to the immortal ascension stairs. How many years have you spent in the mortal world? What does this mean? She softly murmured. She opened her eyes and looked at the first floor. When her gaze landed on a certain spot, her eyes flashed. She immediately got up and walked to the first floor. She came to a few rows of bookshelves at the back where the chairs were placed. She looked at the chair that the old man had stood on during the day. She stood on it and searched the bookshelves above. Nothing? Am I overthinking things? She was puzzled and looked up again. Her gaze fell on the top shelf, so she took down all the books on the top and placed them on the ground one by one. Then, she sat on the chair and started to look through them one by one. When she held a sealed book in her hand, she looked at the words on it and couldn't help but feel joy in her eyes. Punlai Miscellany? This is a book that records the records of the Punlai Immortal Island. Could it be that there's information about the stairway of immortality in here? She muttered to herself. Looking at the seal on the book, she could not help but smile. Whether it was unsealing, enchantments, or a raise, it was not a problem for her. Like this kind of imprint, as long as she unsealed it and looked at it, she could seal it again. She held the book in one hand and condensed her spiritual power in the other. She muttered a spell to break the seal. The spiritual power in her palm brushed past the book like a fire pattern, and the seal on the book disappeared like water ripples. Chapter 2587. She sat by the bookshelf and used the light from the night illumination pearl to flip through the pages. As time passed and the sky darkened, the book in her hand gradually reached the last few pages. The immortal ascension ladder? It really is here. A smile appeared on her face. Because she had found the information she was looking for, she did not feel sleepy even though it was already late at night. The Immortal Ascension Ladder, also known as the Heaven Ascension Ladder, has a total of 99,999 steps. The other end of the ladder leads to another mysterious world. However, in order to ascend the Immortal Ascension Ladder, a cultivator must be at least at the Immortal Emperor realm. Those who are not at the Immortal Emperor realm will not be able to touch the steps. Furthermore, their divine sense will be damaged by the powerful restrictions. In a light case, their cultivation will be crippled, and in a serious case, they will die on the spot. She softly read, and the more she read, the more surprised she became. Only immortal emperors can ascend the Immortal Ascension Ladder? Could it be that old man Tianji knew that she had reached the Immortal Emperor realm, so he allowed her to come here? I'm really curious. I wonder if that old man Tianji has ascended the Immortal Ascension Ladder? She flipped to the next page and saw that it recorded the locations of the Immortal Ascension Ladder and a simple map. The heart of Peng Lai Immortal Island? This map. Her fingers slowly moved across the map. From the markings on the map, she found the locations of the 4 towns. Only then did she realize that the 4 towns were located at the edge of Peng Lai Immortal Island. Then, the heart of the island is here. Her fingers stopped at the circle in the middle, and she carefully memorized the map. She flipped to the back and saw that the last page recorded the names of those who had ascended the Immortal Ascension Ladder. She closed the book in her hand and used her spiritual energy to seal the book again. Then, she put it back in its original position with the others. She did not expect to find it in just one day. If she did not remember that the old man had stood on the chair and wiped the books, she would not have thought of looking at the books on this bookshelf. However, since she was already here, and there were so many precious books here, it would be a pity if she did not take this opportunity to take a good look. Thinking of this, she walked up to the 2nd floor, picked up those sealed cultivation technique manuals, and flipped through them. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Feng Jiu walked out of the library in the morning. Outside, the city lord and Ling Tianyu were waiting. When they saw her come out, the city lord smiled and walked up to her. Young Master Feng, did you find any information? City Lord Ling almost called him young Miss Feng, but when he remembered that he didn't say that he was a woman, he still called him young master. Lord Immortal Ascension Ladder. Lord Immortal Ascension Ladder. Lord. Immortal Lords, Immortal. Immortal Lord. Lord. As. Hearing this, Ling Tianyu glanced at Feng Jiu with an unsightly expression. Then, she said to her father, Father, he's leaving. Why do you want to keep him? Moreover, I don't like him. It's good that he's leaving. Out of sight, out of mind. Impudent. Chapter 2588. Feng Jiu smiled. Mayor, there's no need to be angry. It's time for me to leave. She cupped her hands and bowed, then walked out. Young Master Feng, wait, I'll see you out. The mayor glared at his son fiercely, then quickly followed her out. Ling Tianyu didn't understand her father's actions. She didn't understand why her father, who had always been arrogant, would take a liking to such a brat. He even treated him as an important guest and allowed him to enter. Outside the gates of the mayor's manor, Feng Jiu turned around and smiled. Mayor, there's no need to see me out. Goodbye. All right, if there's a chance in the future, I'll invite young Master Feng to the manor as a guest. At that time, you must stay for a few days. The mayor said. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled and replied, Of course. She then turned around and left. Watching her leave, until her figure disappeared from his sight, he sighed softly and shook his head. He turned around and was about to go back. Who knew that when he turned around, he would see his son standing behind him, looking at him. Father, why do you like that brat so much? What do you like about him? Ling Tianyu asked, her eyes fixed on her father's face, not missing a single expression. Being asked by his son like this, the mayor looked at him unhappily and said, Do you think I'm like you? Seeing a handsome young man, you want to order him around? I have my reasons for treating him differently. You just have to remember what I told you. Don't think too much about other things. Seeing that her father was about to walk inside, Ling Tianyu pulled him back and stared at him, saying, "Father, I know you're hiding something from me. If you don't tell me, then I'll have to find that brat and ask him." Hearing this, the mayor's face was slightly stunned. Then he glared at him. "You dare? Father, do you think I won't dare? You said it yourself, I've done a lot of bad things on a daily basis. I don't care about one more," he said coldly, as if he didn't care. You. The city lord was so angry that his face turned ashen. He stared at him for a long time without saying a word. After a long time, he exhaled softly, suppressed the anger in his heart, and said in a deep voice, "Come with me to the study." Hearing that, Ling Tianyu followed him inside. Feng Jiu left the city lord's mansion and walked around the streets. He bought some things and had a simple meal at a street corner before coming to an inn. However, when she arrived at the entrance of the inn, she paused for a moment and turned her head slightly to glance behind her before walking in. Someone was following her. She had sensed at the moment she left the city lord's mansion. When she first arrived here, other than having conflicts with Ling Tianyu, she didn't have any grudges with anyone else. Could it be that the person following her was sent by Ling Tianyu? Judging from the mayor's attitude and words, he probably wouldn't let anyone follow her. Then, it was very likely that it was the mayor's son, Ling Tianyu. The corners of her lips curled up, revealing a smile. He was someone who even swore an oath to heaven and earth. If he really did something, even if she didn't do anything, the rules of heaven and earth would automatically punish him. Therefore, she wasn't worried that the person following her would do anything to her. Chapter 2589. "Sir, you'll have to pay half of the room fee before you can go upstairs," the innkeeper said to Feng Jiu with a smile. "How much?" Feng Jiu took out the gold coins, but the innkeeper waved his hand with a smile. "Not gold coins, but crystals. You can only use crystals here. Things like gold coins can only be used outside of Penglai Immortal Island. Here, you can only use crystals." Crystals were far more precious than gold coins. Furthermore, crystals contained spiritual energy that could aid in cultivation. She didn't expect that this place would only use crystals. No one wanted gold coins. Feng Jiu smiled and took out the crystals, handing them to the innkeeper. "Is this enough?" It's enough, it's enough. "Sir, please follow me." The innkeeper was also a celestial sage cultivator. He personally led Feng Jiu to the second floor. As Feng Jiu walked up the stairs, she looked at the people on the first floor of the inn. She saw that they were all cultivators of the fairy realm and the celestial saint realm. When she thought about the records of this place, she knew that these people had all consumed strange fruits and medicines to reach this level of strength. They could only reach this level for the rest of their lives, and would never be able to advance any further. "Sir, this is your room. If you need anything, you can call for the waiter," the innkeeper said and bowed before leaving. Feng Jiu entered the room and closed the door. After locking the door, she went to rest on the bed in the inner room. She had been reading the books in the city lord's mansion for the past 3 days without sleeping. Right now, she just wanted to have a good sleep. However, because she knew that someone was watching her from outside, she summoned Tun Yun in order to relax and sleep. "Tun Yun, lie on the side of the bed and watch over me. I'll sleep for a while to recover my energy," she said as she patted Tun Yun's head. "All right, master, don't worry and sleep. I'll watch over you," Tun Yun replied and lay down on the side of the bed. His eyes were focused on the movements outside. Feng Jiu, who was lying on the bed, gradually relaxed. Sleepiness overtook her, and she fell into a deep sleep. With Tun Yun watching over her, she felt at ease and slept soundly. At this moment, she didn't know that after Ling Tianyu heard her father's words, her mind was in a mess. She felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. "A woman? That Feng Jiu is actually a woman?" he muttered under his breath. When he suddenly heard this news, he only felt shame, anger, and disbelief. He, the dignified Castellan Manor's young Castellan. Losing to that brat was one thing, but now he was being told that the brat was actually a woman. He actually lost to a woman. He had originally promised his father that he would not leave the Fu, but now he had the urge to leave the Fu and see where that Feng Jiu had run off to. Thus, He took Zhu Yi with him, and the two of them left the residence and headed outside. After searching through the inns one by one, he still couldn't find the place where Feng Jiu was staying. He couldn't help but think, could he have left? However, after thinking about it, he felt that it wasn't quite possible. Thus, he said to Zhu Yi, go to the inn in front and ask around. I'll drink some tea here first. He gestured for Zhu Yi to go to the inn in front and ask about Feng Jiu. Meanwhile, he sat down at a roadside stall and asked the old man at the tea stall to serve him a cup of tea. However, he was a little absent-minded as he drank the tea. How could such a carefree and unrestrained man be a woman? His face was handsome and devilishly charming. A person like that should be a man. How could he be a woman? Chapter 2590. Yi, who was dressed in a guard's uniform, walked back quickly and said to Ling Tianyu, who was drinking tea, Master, the innkeeper of the inn in front said that a handsome young man in red came to stay, and he hasn't come out since he entered the inn. Hearing this, Ling Tianyu paused for a moment with the teacup in her hand and looked forward. Was he in the inn in front? He had found him, but what should he do after finding him? Ask her why she was a woman? Fight with her again? He didn't know that the other party was a woman, but now that he knew it was a woman, how could he, a man, fight with a woman? At this moment, he had forgotten that a man like him couldn't beat a woman like her. Seeing his master holding the teacup and thinking about something, he thought for a moment and asked, Master, do you want to go in and find him? Why do you want to find him? Ling Tianyu snorted. Father told me not to make trouble for her again. Since she is staying in the inn, let's forget about it. Hearing this, Zhu Yi was stunned for a moment. He didn't understand what his master meant. After coming out of the mansion, they searched several streets and asked inns one by one. In the end, they found him but didn't go in. He thought that his master was looking for Feng Jiu for something. But it seemed that, Master, are we going back now? The mayor said that we can't stay out for too long. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw his master's sharp eyes looking at him, and he couldn't help but lower his head. Ling Tianyu sat there and drank tea, but her eyes fell on the door of the inn. However, as time went by, she didn't see Feng Jiu step out of the inn until noon. However, when he was ready to go back to the mansion, he glanced around the inn again and noticed that there were a few people like him who had been sitting there since the morning, and they were also staring at the inn from time to time. His heart skipped a beat, and he looked at those people quietly. He found that they were all at the level of sage celestial, and among them, there was one whose cultivation he couldn't see through. With his strength at the peak of the celestial sage realm, he couldn't see through the cultivation base of those who were stronger than him. These people were all unfamiliar faces, so he couldn't help but pay extra attention to them. So he called out and whispered a few words in Zhu Yi's ear. After hearing his words, Zhu Yi was slightly startled. He followed his gaze and finally nodded. Yes, I will do it right away. He was about to leave, but he ordered another pot of tea to continue drinking. As he looked at the entrance of the inn, he didn't forget to pay attention to the cultivators until Zhu Yi returned. Master, Zhu Yi came to his side and said in a low voice, the guards at the gate said that those people entered the city yesterday morning. After entering the city, they asked around for information about Feng Jiu. Hearing this, Ling Tianyu frowned slightly and put down the teacup in his hand. He stood up and said in a deep voice, Bill. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked towards the inn. After Zhu Yi paid a piece of crystal stone, he quickly followed behind him and entered the inn together. Which room is Feng Jiu in? Ling Tianyu looked at Zhu Yi and asked. The first room on the left on the second floor. As soon as he finished speaking, his master had already walked upstairs. Chapter 2591. In the room, Tun Yun, who was originally lying on the floor, stood up and patted Feng Jiu on the bed with its paw. Master, someone is calling you from outside. Feng Jiu woke up when she heard the voice outside. She opened her eyes and yawned as she got up from the bed. After putting Tun Yun back into her space, she tidied her robes and walked out. When the door opened, the first thing he saw was Ling Tianyu's face. She lazily glanced at him with her sleepy eyes and asked, What's the matter? She leaned against the door and stood there lazily with her arms crossed in front of her chest. Ling Tianyu looked at the beautiful face in front of him. Looking at her sleepy face and the laziness in her actions, his eyes couldn't help but flicker. For a moment, he was absent-minded and didn't say a word for a long time. So Yi, who was following beside him, saw that his master was absent-minded while looking at a man. He quietly reached out and tugged at his robes, calling out in a low voice, "Master, what are you doing?" Ling Tianyu glared at him unhappily. Seeing that he was hinting at Fengjiu in front of him with his eyes, he finally came back to his senses. Ahem! He coughed lightly and looked at Fengjiu, who was standing by the door and didn't seem to want to invite him in. He said, "I have something to tell you." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to walk in. Unexpectedly, Fengjiu, who was standing diagonally, reached out and stopped him. "If you have something to say it here." Hearing that, Ling Tianyu was slightly annoyed. "Let's talk inside." Seeing that, Fengjiu took a step back and reached out to close the door. Seeing that, Ling Tianyu hurriedly reached out and stopped him. She said angrily, "Don't be so ungrateful. I'm here to tell you something." "Say it." Seeing her blocking the door, Ling Tianyu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "I'm here to tell you that you're being watched. There are several cultivators outside who have been waiting for an entire day. Even I can't see through one of them." He paused and glanced at her. Seeing her raise her eyebrows and look at him with surprise, he said, "Don't think too much. I still don't like you, but my father told me not to cause trouble for you. The reason I came to tell you is to let you know that those people were not sent by me, so you won't suspect me later." "Oh, so it wasn't you who sent them?" She nodded, her expression showing that she understood. Hearing this, he glared at her angrily. "You already knew? You suspect that I did it?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "I knew that I was being watched from the moment I left your house. I didn't offend anyone here, so the first person I suspected was you. There's nothing wrong with that." With that, she smiled and said, "However, now that I know that it wasn't you who sent people to watch me, I have to think about who else would be watching me. Okay, that's it." As soon as he finished speaking, the door slammed shut, leaving Ling Tianyu outside. Outside the room, Ling Tianyu saw the door slammed shut in front of him, and his face turned pale. He clenched his fists and suppressed the rising anger in his heart. After taking a deep breath, he cursed in a low voice, "You don't know what's good for you." Seeing his master turn around and leave angrily, Sui hurriedly followed. After being busy for an entire day, he had no idea what his master was doing. Even if someone was watching Fengjiu, it was none of his business. Chapter 2592. Was it not sent by him? Then who could it be? She pondered in her heart and faintly had a suspect. Was it the person who came for the chaos, Cyan Lotus? But didn't the Penglai immortal island appear on the sea only once every half a month? If it was those people, how did they come here? Or were they originally from this place? After drinking 2 cups of water, she opened the door and called out, "Waiter, come up." "Okay." The waiter downstairs answered and walked quickly to Fengjiu's room. "Child, what can I do for you?" "Prepare some food for me. If there's any famous food nearby, then buy some for me." While speaking, she handed over some spar to him. "Okay, I'll do it right away." The waiter took the crystal stones and went downstairs with a smile. He told the shopkeeper to let the kitchen prepare some food, and then went out to buy some things. After the kitchen sent a few dishes upstairs, the waiter who went out to buy also came back. He entered the room and then came to the table. He smiled and said to Fengjiu, "Child, this is the roast chicken and crispy suckling pig of the Baiwei building, the rainbow cake of the Yunxiang building, the radish cake of the East Street." And he put the things he bought on the table one by one from the space ring and introduced them to Fengjiu. Until the table was full, he said, "Child, there are 2 crystal stones left." He handed them back to Fengjiu. Fengjiu smiled and said, "I'll give the rest to you. You can leave now. Don't come up without my order." "Yes, thank you, child." The waiter responded with a smile, and then went out and closed the door. Looking at the table full of food, She put away the things that could be kept into her space and left some food for herself. When she was full, she opened a small crack in the window at the back. Seeing that there was still someone staring at her, she called the waiter in. "Child, what else can I do for you?" Fengjiu looked at the waiter in front of him and smiled. "Nothing. I just want to borrow your clothes." As soon as he said that, he reached out and hit the waiter's acupoints. In the waiter's astonished and frightened eyes, he took off his clothes and put them on himself. After that, he did some simple treatment and then said to the waiter who was still, "I put the rest on the table. I'll give it to the shopkeeper later. As for your acupoints, they will be unlocked in 4 hours." Little Fool stood there, unable to move or speak. Seeing the red-clothed young man put on his clothes and leave, he let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he just took off his clothes. As the sky darkened, for hours later, Little Fool walked out of the room in his undergarments with a gloomy expression. Yi Jie and the other cultivators suddenly stood up. "Quickly let go, let go." The waiter shouted in panic, "Shopkeeper, shopkeeper, save me." "Shut up." The cultivator who grabbed the waiter's clothes shouted with a gloomy face. He lifted the waiter off the ground and asked with a gloomy voice, "Where is the person in the room?" Chapter 2593. Hearing this, the cultivators thought of the figure in the waiter's uniform that walked past them 4 hours ago, and their faces couldn't help but tighten. Damn it! He stretched out his hand and threw his waiter out, smashing him to the first floor. The waiter cried out in pain and scrambled to his feet to hide behind the shopkeeper. 2 tables on the first floor were smashed. Seeing the murderous aura of these people, the shopkeeper didn't dare to pursue the matter. He just protected the waiter and watched them leave. After they left, he turned around and asked the waiter what was going on. The cultivators who left the inn gathered together, and there were actually more than 10 of them. Ling Tianyu only saw a few people outside and didn't know that there were people behind her and on the first floor of the inn. They left 4 hours ago, so they should be far away by now. Where should we go to find them? A cultivator asked, and his gaze fell on the leader. The leader's face was gloomy, and he stared at the people coming and going on the street and said in a cold voice, "It wasn't easy for us to find her here, but now we have no clues. We can only go back and wait for news." Feng Jiu, who had already left the city, was walking on the mountain road. She had no idea that those people were no longer chasing after her. She was still wearing the waiter's clothes. Her originally beautiful face had already been disguised into the ordinary face she used most in the past. Her aura was also restrained, and she looked silly. People who didn't know her would only think that she was a teenager from the countryside or somewhere else when looking at her. However, very few youths would walk at night, especially on this mountain path where there were no villages or shops. The sound of horses galloping could be heard from the mountain path, and Feng Jiu stopped to look. She saw 2 carriages, one in front of the other, and there were lights in front of the carriages. They didn't look like lights, but more like luminous pearls. Seeing this, she retreated to the side of the mountain path and let the carriages pass. A carriage traveling at night, there should be something urgent. Otherwise, it would be normal for carriages to rest at night, and very few carriages would travel at night. Although there was a distance between them, because there was no one else on the road, she could faintly hear the sounds of laughter coming from the carriages. There seemed to be old people, as well as young men and women. Look, there's a young man outside." A young girl's charming voice rang out with a smile and curiosity. She looked at the young man standing by the roadside in the night. Feng Jiu looked up and saw the girl in the pink dress poking her head out of the carriage window. She blinked her limpid eyes and looked at him curiously. What's so strange about that? After all, not everyone can sit in a beast carriage like us. A young man's voice sounded, and there was a hint of arrogance in his tone. "Grandfather, that young man is resting on the grass by the side of the road. We haven't had much rest along the way, so why don't we get off the carriage and walk around? I was tired after sitting in the carriage for a whole day. Moreover, I saw that the stars in the night sky were so bright. I want to go down and take a look." The young girl's charming voice came from the carriage and faintly fell into Feng Jiu's ears. Fengjiu sat down on a grassy slope. He took out a small tent from his space and set it up. Then, like a wisp of smoke, he slipped inside and isolated himself from the whistling night wind outside. Chapter 2594. She sat cross-legged in the small tent and took out some pastries to eat as she looked at the starry sky outside. The stars twinkled and shone brightly. However, when she looked at the moon and stars in the sky, she thought of the people in 100 River City. Now that she was here alone, she didn't know when she would return, and she didn't know how they were doing. Inexplicably, her originally good mood gradually sank. However, when a figure arrived outside her tent and waved, she gathered her thoughts and raised her head to look at the pretty girl in the pink dress. "AI, why are you here alone? Aren't you afraid? I heard from my grandfather that there are ferocious beasts roaming around here. How dare you rest here alone?" The girl asked curiously. Just as she was about to move closer, she was pulled back by a young man behind her. "Little sister, why are you moving so close? I don't know where this person came from. He's so dirty, don't get too close." The young man was dressed in fine clothes and had the appearance of a noble young master. However, at this moment, he was looking at Fengjiu, who was sitting in the tent, with disdain. Fengjiu ate some pastries and looked at them. He then looked away and looked at the stars in the sky, ignoring them. They were just two brats. It would be boring to talk too much. "You two don't go too far." A gentle female voice sounded, attracting Fengjiu's attention. He saw a beautiful woman dressed in simple but elegant clothes. She was wearing a white dress and was standing next to the carriage with a smile. Next to the beautiful woman was an imposing middle-aged man. When the middle-aged man heard the beautiful woman's words, he called out to the girl and the young man, "Your mother told you not to go too far. Did you hear? Come back quickly." The girl quickly ran back and affectionately held the beautiful woman's hand as she said, "Mother, there's a young man about the same age as Big Brother. He set up that tent and wants to rest here. Mother, why isn't he afraid of being eaten by a wild beast?" Hearing this, the beautiful woman and the middle-aged man looked at each other and smiled. The middle-aged man's deep voice carried a smile as he said, "I only know that if you're here alone, you'll definitely be eaten by a wild beast." "Father," the young girl called out reluctantly. Another old man came down from the carriage in front. He stroked his beard and looked up at the night sky. He smiled and said, "Tonight's weather is really good. The bright moon shines on the road, and the cool breeze caresses my face. If we are not in a hurry to return to the main house, we can rest here for the night." "Grandpa, can't we rest here for the night? We're all so tired from rushing all the way." The young girl pouted. "Hee hee, I'll be fine after resting for a while. We've already wasted quite a bit of time on the road. We can't let the main family wait for us, so as to avoid the dissatisfaction of some people in the family. But I don't want to go back too early. If I go back too early, the people in the clan will make father go to the heart of the island. I heard from Big Brother that that place is very dangerous. Little girl, you can't mention this again, especially when you're in front of the main house." The old man instructed. The young girl spat out a mouthful of saliva and made a face. She pulled her mother towards the small tent and said, "Mother, come. Let's go talk to that little brother and ask him why he's so bold. I dare to be alone in the wild." Chapter 2595. Fengjiu sat in the small tent eating pastries. When she heard the young girl's words, her eyes flashed. The heart of the island? The heart of the Peng Lai immortal island? Her heart skipped a beat, and the speed of her eating slowed down. The beautiful woman was pulled to the front of the small tent by the young girl. When she saw the thin and weak figure sitting in the small tent, she couldn't help but be startled. She heard from her daughter that it was a young boy, but she didn't expect the young boy to be so thin and small. Seeing the young boy, who was about the same age as her son and daughter, sitting there eating alone, she couldn't help but feel motherly. "Why are you here by yourself? How could your family be at ease letting you travel alone?" the beautiful woman asked in a gentle voice. Her gentle gaze fell on Fengjiu's face. Fengjiu took a bite of the pastries. Her clear eyes blinked, and there was a simple and honest expression between her brows. She tilted her head slightly and looked at her without saying a word. My mother is asking you a question. Why aren't you answering? Could it be that you're a mute? The young boy shouted and glanced at Fengjiu impatiently. Once he said those words, the others were all startled. Mute? The beautiful woman and her husband looked at each other. Finally, she looked at Fengjiu and asked, Are you unable to speak? Fengjiu thought for a moment and nodded. She held the pastries with both hands and continued to eat. Her actions and appearance were like a child who had been starving for a long time. Husband, look at this child. The beautiful woman looked at her husband and hesitated. Madam, you're not thinking of picking him up and bringing him along, are you? This is a human, not a small animal. The man shook his head and smiled with a helpless expression. No, I'm thinking that our carriage also has space. If this child is going the same way as us, why don't we bring him along so that he won't encounter any danger on the road? The beautiful woman said gently. Seeing this, the middle-aged man didn't speak. He only stared at Fengjiu and sized him up. Do you want to come with us? We have a carriage that can bring you along. In any case, the road is still far away. You can come with us. The young girl squatted in front of Fengjiu and looked at her with a smile. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly startled. She blinked her clear and harmless eyes at the people in front of her, finally thought and nodded. At the same time, she extended her hand and handed a pastry to the young girl to show her friendliness. For me to eat? What kind of pastry is this? The young girl was not wary of others. Seeing Fengjiu pass the pastry to her, she picked it up and was about to eat it when the middle-aged man beside her coughed softly. Little Sure, have you forgotten what father said to you again? When you're outside, don't simply eat things given by strangers. The middle-aged man said calmly. Hearing this, she said, He's too. Yes, he's. What's more, he doesn't know us and won't poison us. What's there to be afraid of? As he spoke, he took a bite of the pastry. It's delicious. She smiled at her parents and said to Fengjiu, Thank you. My name is Xie Shirsi. The poem at the front is the poem of poetry, and the poem at the back is the poem of yearning. My family calls me Little Sure. What's your name? Just call him Mute. What's the point of calling him that? The young man kicked the dirt on the ground and snorted. He looked at Fengjiu with disdain. Chapter 2596. Fengjiu came out from the tent and put away the small tent. The young girl beside him was chattering nonstop. Beside the carriage, the old man saw the two of them coming over and looked towards the figure who was putting away the small tent. He asked, You want to bring that young man with you? The middle-aged man looked back and said, That young man looks very ordinary. He has a simple and honest face. I can see that he is just an ordinary child with a little bit of cultivation. He is also a mute who can't speak. In addition, Xiao Sure likes him very much, so I thought that it would be fine to bring him along. Let him sit outside the carriage with the coachman and let him leave when we reach the city. A child who didn't seem to be a threat. Since his wife and daughter wanted to help him, he would agree to it. When the old man heard this, he nodded and said, Let them enter the carriage. With that, he entered the carriage first. The beautiful woman and the middle-aged man sat in the back carriage, while the old man and the siblings sat in the front carriage. Fengjiu stood to the side, hesitating about which carriage to sit in. Then he saw the young girl stretch her head out and waved at him. Sit here. Come quickly. He paused for a moment, then walked into the carriage and sat beside the coachman. However, the moment he sat down, he was pulled into the carriage by the young girl. Little sister, why did you pull him in? He looks so dirty. The young man frowned and avoided Fengjiu, not wanting to touch him. Yutong, how can you speak like that? The old man who had his eyes closed opened his eyes when he heard his words. He frowned as he looked at the young man. His old voice was filled with vigor as he said, Although the strong are respected in this world, words and deeds are also very important. Today, you are a descendant of the Xie family, so your status is respected. But if you weren't a descendant of the Xie family and were just a commoner, what would happen? When the young man heard the old man's words, his face turned red and he lowered his head. Grandfather, Grandfather doesn't want to scold you. I just want to teach you how to conduct yourself. You are still young now, but in a few years, if your words and deeds are still like this, people will only look down on you. You must remember, if you want people to respect you, you must respect others first. The old man's voice was deep as he lectured. At the same time, his gaze turned to Fengjiu. When Fengjiu heard the old man's words, he couldn't help but be surprised. In this world where the strong were respected, it was rare for the old man to teach his children like this. But no matter how strong one's strength, one's heart. Moreover, if one were to speak with disdain, contempt, and disdain, then how could such a person obtain the respect of others? Yes. Big brother, you should listen to Grandpa's words more. Grandpa's words make the most sense. The girl said with a smile. Is it natural or acquired? The old man looked at Fengjiu and asked. When she met the old man's gaze, she paused for a moment. She saw a small tea table in the middle of the carriage, and there was a pot of tea on it. She dipped her finger into the tea and wrote a few words on the table, telling him that she couldn't speak because of a recent injury to her throat and that she would recover in a few days. Seeing this, the old man nodded and said, Since we have met, it must be fate. Let's keep them company for the rest of the journey. Fengjiu looked at the two of them and nodded. Chapter 2597. The girl blinked her eyes and asked Fengjiu with a smile. Seeing this, Fengjiu wrote Fengjiu on the table. Fengjiu, your name is so simple, but I don't think I've heard of the surname Feng. The girl looked at the old man and asked, Grandpa, have you heard of the surname Feng? The surname Feng is not common. The old man looked at Fengjiu and asked, Where are you from? Where are you going? Hearing this, Fengjiu wrote the words vagrant cultivator on the table. You call yourself a vagrant cultivator? You're even weaker than me. Shai Yutong glanced at Fengjiu and whispered, Vagrant. No wonder he sleeps in a small tent on the side of the road. Fengjiu, who was sitting in the carriage with them, gradually fell asleep during the questions and answers. She leaned against the corner of the carriage and fell into a deep sleep, her whole body slanting over. As the night deepened, the brother and sister also fell asleep. Only the old man opened his eyes after they fell asleep, and his wise eyes fell on Feng Nine. After chatting for a while and observing him, he found that this youth was ordinary and unremarkable. Since he wasn't a threat to them, he didn't pay too much attention to him. He leaned against the carriage and fell asleep. Fengjiu closed his eyes and breathed deeply, but he was not asleep. She was thinking in her heart. First, she was unfamiliar with this place, and it would not be easy to find the heart of the island. Second, she happened to meet the people of the Xie family. It seemed that they were also going to the heart of the island. Instead of looking for it herself, it was better to follow them first and find an opportunity to go there. In particular, the ladder of immortality was so mysterious. She also wanted to take advantage of this period of time to find out more about the ladder of immortality and learn more about this place called Penglai. Therefore, she thought it would be a good choice to follow the people of the Xie family. More importantly, she felt that the people of the Xie family were very pleasing to the eye. The spirit beast carriage ran at an extremely fast speed, and the sound of its hooves was like a lullaby in the night, causing the people in the carriage to fall asleep as they listened to the sound of the horse hooves. The night passed peacefully. However, when it was almost dawn, the spirit beast carriage suddenly stopped as if it was hit by something. Because of the inertia, the people in the carriage also swooped out. What happened? Xie exclaimed. After stabilizing herself, she stuck her head out of the window. However, when Fengjiu raised his eyes and glanced over, he saw a flash of cold light. He immediately stretched out his hand and pulled her back. Be careful, the old man exclaimed in a low voice. His heart seemed to be in his throat at that moment. When he saw the sharp sword cutting through the window with his own eyes, he couldn't help but sweat in his heart. If it weren't for Fengjiu pulling her back, his granddaughter would have been beheaded. Xie, who fell in the carriage, turned pale and asked, What's wrong? I just felt like my body was trapped and I couldn't move. She said with lingering fear and patted her chest. Sha Yutong also came to his senses and said, "Listen, why does it seem that there's a fight outside?" Chapter 2598. Grandpa, the coachman was killed. Sha Yutong said with an ugly face. He stood up and jumped out of the carriage, ready to join the battle. "Come back. Don't run around." The old man's face sank, and he shouted. Seeing that his grandson had jumped out of the carriage, he pulled Xie Shirsi out of the carriage. Seeing this, Fengjiu, who was still in the carriage, also got out of the carriage. He glanced around and saw that there were more than 20 black-robed men who attacked the Xie family, while there were only a dozen shadow guards who followed and protected them in the dark. Although their strength was almost the same, the situation was not optimistic because there were so many of them. In particular, other than the hidden guards, the only ones who were relatively strong in the two carriages were the old man and the middle-aged man. Now, the old man had to protect his grandsons, and the middle-aged man had to protect his wife who didn't have any fighting strength. Seeing that the beautiful woman was hiding beside the middle-aged man, she was obviously afraid but still didn't say a word. She couldn't help being curious. The Xie family sounded like a big family. Why did they marry a woman who had no cultivation? It was strange. Hiss! Sha Yutong couldn't dodge in time. His arm was cut by the sword chi of a black-robed man's long sword. Blood suddenly oozed out, which made him instinctively exclaim and stagger back. However, at this time, the black-robed man's long sword went straight up and aimed at Sha Yutong's life. It seemed that he was ready to kill him. "Yutong! Be careful, Yutong!" The old man couldn't go forward because he was protecting his granddaughter, and the middle-aged man couldn't leave because he was protecting his beautiful wife. Seeing that Sha Yutong was about to be killed, the two men's eyes turned red and their killing intent burst out. The long swords were even more fierce. Both of them wanted to rush forward to save him. However, at this time, Fengjiu, who was standing beside the carriage, moved quickly and pulled Sha Yutong's collar, pulling him behind him. The sword also stabbed down at the same time. The fierce sword chi whistled past, which made Sha Yutong's face change slightly and his movements become stiff. After seeing that he had dodged the fatal blow, the Xie family members heaved a sigh of relief. They tried their best to gather together, protecting the weak behind them. Fengjiu pulled Sha Yutong to avoid the attacks of those people. Because Sha Yutong was frightened, his reaction was half a beat slower. Even when the knife in the hand of the man in black fell between the two of them were separated by a small distance. Fengjiu's eyes flashed when he saw the two black-clothed men approaching. If she had used her full strength, she would have been able to dodge them easily. She could have even killed the two men in black. However, she would have exposed her true strength. If she had exposed her true strength, it would have been difficult for her to approach the Xie clan. Thinking of this, her heart moved slightly. When she saw the two men in black coming, she rushed forward, hugged Sha Yutong, pushed him down, and rolled to the side of the old man. However, when the two of them were rolling away, Fengjiu saw a cold light refracting towards him. He was originally prepared to avoid it, but when he got closer, he changed his mind and raised his hand to block it. Chapter 2599. Fengjiu covered his wound with one hand and endured the pain as he stood up. At this moment, the old man pushed Xie Shirsi to her side. Then, in a flash, he rushed out and killed the two black-robed men in an instant. With the deaths of those people, the number of black-robed men gradually decreased. The remaining few saw that the situation was not good and immediately retreated. As those people retreated, the surroundings regained its tranquility. However, whether it was the corpses on the ground or the smell of blood in the air, it was impossible to ignore. "Tanga, how are you? Are you hurt?" The beautiful woman hurriedly helped her son up from the ground and looked at him from head to toe. "Mother," Big Brother's arm was scratched. "It's not a big deal," Xie Shirsi said and looked at Fengjiu. But Fengjiu seems to be injured quite badly. This wound is still bleeding. Seeing this, the beautiful woman hurriedly went forward. Come, let me apply some medicine for you and bandage your wound. She took out some medicine and hurriedly applied it on Fengjio's wound while thanking her. If it wasn't for me, my family's Tang might not have survived. Thank you for saving him. You are his savior. Brother, come, let me apply medicine for your wound. As Xie Shirsi spoke, she came to her brother's side and checked his injured arm. After cleaning it, she sprinkled some medicine on it and bandaged it. Seeing that the situation had stabilized, the old man and the middle-aged man stood together and whispered something to each other while the shadow guards cleaned up the corpses on the ground. It's been a good journey. It's been peaceful and nothing has happened. I didn't expect them to be lying in ambush here. If there were more people, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to deal with them. The middle-aged man said in a low voice as he looked at his family and the injured youth. It's all thanks to him. If he hadn't pulled Yutong back, Yutong would be a corpse now. The middle-aged man sighed. He was injured in order to save Yutong. The old man also looked at Fengjio with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Just now I saw that his footwork was very strange. He moved his feet and his figure dashed out. His speed was very fast. It doesn't seem to match his strength. Hearing this, the middle-aged man glanced at Fengjio before shifting his gaze away. Looking at the wives and children surrounding the young man, he couldn't help but reveal a serious expression. Father, we haven't even reached the main family, and it's already like this. If we reach the main family, will this kind of thing happen every 2 or 3 days? You also know that they are not good at scheming and scheming. I am really worried that they will cause some trouble in the main house. Don't spout nonsense, the old man said in a deep voice. Until now, there is no evidence to say that it was done by the main family. We can't simply suspect. Who else could it be other than them? If it weren't for the people from the main house telling us to move to the main house, we wouldn't have encountered these things on the way. All right, we'll talk about this later. Let's take a look at that young man first. The old man said as he walked towards Fengjio. How is it? Is the injury serious? The old man asked as he looked at the young man's face while he endured the pain. It's not light, but I've already applied medicine. It's just that it won't heal for a few days. The beautiful woman said as she looked at the young man's bandaged arm and sighed in relief. Yutong, what are you still standing there for? Come and thank Xiaojio. If it weren't for her, you would have been dead. Chapter 2600. Thank you, Shai Yutong said awkwardly in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, he ran to his mother's side. Feng Nine smiled and lowered her head to look at the wound that she had bandaged. Burn the corpses of our people and bring their ashes back. When the time comes, send them back to their families. The old man instructed the secret guards. He looked at the corpses and sighed softly in his heart. The fire rose in the night sky, illuminating half of the sky. A gust of wind blew, and there was a foul smell in the air. Those secret guards did as he said and cremated the bodies. After picking up the ashes, they took out jars from their chinkoan bags and stored them inside. Fengjio saw that they were skilled and prepared. Obviously, it was not the first time that they had done such a thing. It seemed that they had dealt with the dead secret guards in this way before. Compared with burying them, it was better to burn them like this to prevent future troubles. After all, no one knew if there would be any ferocious beasts digging up the bodies buried in the ground and gnawing them. If they burned the bodies and took the ashes back to their families, no one would worship them after they died. Let's go. Let's go back first, the old man said and motioned for them to get on the beast carriage. The guards who had been hiding in the dark also showed up and followed the carriage. They continued to move forward. As the sky gradually brightened, the carriage gradually approached the next town. The old man frowned slightly, looked at Fengjio sitting beside him, and asked, Xiaojio, what are you going to do next? Do you have relatives in the city? Hearing this, Fengjio shook his head. Seeing this, the old man pondered. His eyes fell on his injured arm. After thinking for a while, he said, We are going back to the main family this time. We will settle down in the main family of the Xie family. If you come with us, I'm afraid. Hearing this, Shai Yutong glanced at Fengjio who was sitting beside him with his head down, and said, "Grandpa, let him wear the clothes of secret guard and pretend to be a secret guard in our mansion. Otherwise, let him be my manservant and follow me around." Hearing this, Fengjiu looked up at him with some surprise. "What are you looking at? I just don't want to owe you a favor. Don't you have nowhere else to go? Since that's the case, you can stay by my side as my manservant. I can't promise you anything else, but I'll definitely provide you with 3 meals." The old man thought for a moment and looked at Fengjiu. "If you really have nowhere else to go, then stay by Yutang's side." This young man seemed to have a calmer temperament than Yutang, and there was a simple and honest look between his brows. With his ability to read people, he didn't seem to be someone with bad intentions. When Fengjiu heard the old man's words, he smiled and nodded. He then wrote the word "thank you" on the table. "That's great. Then you can play with me in the future," Xie Shirsi said happily. "Let me tell you about our Xie clan. After arriving at the Xie clan, you should stay by Yutang's side. Don't be impulsive. After all, we're not direct descendants in a large clan, so it's hard for us to have a say." Fengjiu nodded and listened as the old man told the 3 of them about the things they needed to pay attention to when they arrived at the Xie residence. Chapter 26:01. The old man shook his head and smiled. "We are all members of the Xie family. If the main family asks us to go back, of course we have to go back. What's more, it's a great thing in the eyes of others. After all, the collateral relatives have to rely on the main family. And after we go to the main family, we also have an independent courtyard. That's not as good as our original home," Shai Yutang said and stopped talking. He lowered his head and thought about something. "Grandpa, we are collateral relatives of the Xie family. Will the people of the main family look down on us? Will they bully us?" Xie Shirsi asked worriedly. Hearing this, the old man said, "No. Grandpa said that we are all family. What's more, we have to be reasonable outside. We're not allowed to fight among our own family. You can rest assured." "But what if they bully us?" she still asked worriedly. Then come and tell Grandpa. Grandpa will deal with it. However, you are not young anymore. In the past, we protected you too well at home. You have to learn to get along with others appropriately." The old man said meaningfully. The carriage ran on the road. Because he didn't rest all night, Fengjiu fell asleep leaning on the carriage. After a long time, the carriage stopped and the voice of the shadow guard outside came. "Old master, we are at the gate of the main family." The old man in the carriage got off first, and then Fengjiu and others followed. The middle-aged man and the beautiful woman in the carriage behind also came to the old man's side. "Knock on the door." The old man motioned a shadow guard to come forward. "Yes," the shadow guard answered. After knocking on the door, he reported the family's name. When the old man who opened the door heard that they were collateral relatives of the Xie family, he took a look outside and then invited them in. At the same time, he asked someone to hurry inside to report. As soon as the master of the Xie family heard the servant's report, he called all the people in the mansion and went to the front hall together. In the front hall, the old man and others were sitting. Fengjiu stood behind Shai Yutang and stood quietly with slightly lowered eyes. It was not until he heard the laughter outside that he raised his eyes slightly to look. "Oh, as soon as I heard that Uncle Tokugawa was here, I came here immediately." A middle-aged man in an embroidered jade robe walked in with a smile on his face. His gaze landed on the old man. "Uncle Tokugawa, thank you for not seeing you for a while." He bowed to the old man. "Patriarch." The old man stood up after he came in. At this time, he also bowed to him. Then he said to the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman, "Come and greet the family head. We're all family, so there's no need for formalities. This must be little brother Yin and sister-in-law," Xie family head said with a smile. His gaze landed on the middle-aged man in front of him and the beautiful woman beside him. "Greetings, Patriarch." The 2 of them bowed. Xie Yin smiled and said, "This is my wife. These 2 are my children." Master, Shai Yutang and Xie Shirsi also stepped forward and saluted. "What are your names?" Xie family head asked with a smile, his gaze falling on the young man and the young girl. Master, my name is Shai Yutong. My name is Xie Shursi. It's Shur from poetry and Si from yearning, she said with a smile. Oh, well, it's the first time we meet. Come on, this is a gift for you too. He fumbled in his sleeve and took out 2 jade pendants and handed them to them. Chapter 26:02. Since the family head gave it to you, you should take it, the old man said with a smile. Hearing this, the two of them were overjoyed and smiled. Thank you, family head. They happily received the jade and thanked him. Fengjiu, who was standing at the side, only took a glance and could tell that the 2 jade pendants were magic weapons. Furthermore, the quality of the jade was not bad. She thought to herself, the Xie family head is quite generous, especially to the collateral family members. However, her gaze did not change as she glanced at the people who came in later. Seeing that each of them had extraordinary strength, she could not help but be slightly moved. The people from the Xie family seemed to be quite strong. From the looks of it, the Xie family should be an aristocratic family with 100 years of history. However, looking at the expressions of these people, some were disapproving and some were contemptuous. It seemed that the Xie family was not a very peaceful place. Come over. Let me introduce you. The Xie family head turned to look at the people behind him and asked them to come forward. Thus, he introduced them to each other. Fengjiu stood quietly at the side, listening and watching. After both sides had greeted each other, the Xie family head called for the housekeeper. Uncle Tokugawa, my father is currently in seclusion and has not come out yet. However, he has instructed us to give you a mansion in the south for you to live in. Knowing that you will be coming in a few days, I have already ordered people to clean it up. You can live there now. When the Xie family head said this, many people's expressions changed slightly. A mansion in the south? It seemed that the family head and the old master still valued this collateral family very much. To give them a mansion in the south showed how much they valued them. Since that was the case, they had to build a good relationship with them in the future. After all, from what they saw today, the old master's strength was so strong that none of the people present could compare to him. That was fine, as he was from the same generation as the old master. However, his son's strength was also above them and could not be ignored. The Xie family head smiled and said, as for the people in the mansion, let Brother Yin find time to go to the slave market and buy some back. If you need anything in the future, feel free to ask. Thank you, family head. The old man replied and thanked him. How about this? All of you must be tired after rushing all the way back. I'll let the steward bring sister-in-law and Yutong back to the residence to rest first. As for Uncle Tokugawa and little brother Yin, please sit for a while. I still have some things to discuss with you. All right, the two of them replied. After informing the beautiful woman, they had them follow the housekeeper back. Fengjiu left with them. When they were outside, they could still faintly hear the sound of people talking. Fengjiu followed the housekeeper and arrived at another mansion. What surprised him was that the Xie clan had given a separate mansion to the branch family members. It was just that this mansion was adjacent to the Xie clan's main residence. Moreover, it had everything they needed, and the design of the courtyard was very pleasing to the eye. With just one look, she knew that this branch family was highly regarded by the main family. Although the people in the hall were strong, they were not as strong as the 2 branch family heads here. It was only natural that they were highly regarded. However, according to the patriarch's words, there were still a few elders who had yet to arrive. Naturally, there was no way to know the strength of those people. Chapter 26:03. Yes, this place is so beautiful, even more beautiful than our original home. Xie Shursi also said excitedly, looking around. The beautiful woman smiled gently and took them to look around. After familiarizing them with the environment, she let them choose a courtyard. Xiaojiu, you can stay in the same courtyard as Yutong. The beautiful woman looked at Fengjiu and said. Fengjiu nodded and agreed. Shai Yutong just glanced at Fengjiu and did not object. He just said, Mother, although our mansion is big, we still need to buy servants. When are we going to buy some servants? Let's talk about it after we settle down. You're all tired today. Let's have a rest first, she said softly and let them go back to their courtyards. Then she went to the main courtyard. About an hour later, the old man and Xie Yin also came back. The old man also chose a courtyard to stay in, while the middle-aged man went to the main courtyard. After a rest, Xie Yin called them all together and said to them, "I'll take you out to eat today. When we come back, we'll go to the slave market and buy some servants." "Will Grandpa go?" Xie Shirsi asked. "Your grandpa wants to have a rest. He said not to disturb him. When we come back, we'll bring him some food," Xie Yin said, and took them to the carriage out of the door. After dinner in the restaurant, Xie Yin took them to the slave market. He smiled and said to his son and daughter, "Today, I'll leave the work of choosing servants to you. It's a test of your eyesight. It's not difficult." Shai Yutong raised his chin slightly and walked forward, looking at the cages of slaves. After a long time, he frowned and came back. "Father, these people have cultivation, and the ones in the cages look very ferocious. I don't know where they came from." "The ones in the cages are those with higher cultivations. Those are usually chosen as guards, but they are enough to protect our family, so there's no need for more. As for the servants, we need to find these stewards and have them bring some out for us to choose from." As he spoke, he pointed at one of the stewards. The beautiful woman had a smile on her face. She didn't say anything and just watched quietly. After Shai Yutong stepped forward and told the steward that he wanted to buy some servants, the steward recruited people and brought out 50 men and women. Most of these people were between 13 and 20 years old. Feng Jiu glanced at them and saw that these people only had a small cultivation base. Their clothes were tattered, and they stood there with their heads lowered. "Look up," Shai Yutong shouted, and then looked at his sister. "Sister, you choose first." I'll pick first." Xie Shirsi was stunned for a moment and turned to look at her mother. Although her mother had taught her how to pick people, she had never done it herself. "Go, try it. If it doesn't work, I'll change it for you," the beautiful woman said and encouraged her to go forward. Thus, Xie Shirsi walked forward and looked at the 10 people in the first row one by one. Finally, she picked out 2 adorable twins from the first row. "Mother, I want these 2. They are twins and look exactly the same. In the future, let them stay by my side and serve me." She looked back at her mother with a smile. Chapter 26:04. The beautiful woman glanced at the 2 girls, smiled, and turned to look at Feng Jiu, asking, "Xiao Jiu, what do you think of these 2 girls?" Hearing this, Xie Yin looked at his wife with some surprise. He didn't expect that she would ask Feng Jiu's opinion. Not only were Xie Yu and Xie Yin stunned, but even Feng Jiu was also stunned. She didn't hide the surprise in her eyes as she looked at the beautiful woman, as if she was surprised that she would ask her. However, she glanced at the twins and nodded. Xie Shirsi's eyesight was not bad. These 2 little girls were very perceptive. Although they were happy when Xie Shirsi chose them, they also looked at the beautiful woman with apprehension. Obviously, they knew that the beautiful woman would be the one to make the final decision. Moreover, the cultivation of these 2 girls was not strong or weak among these people. They were above average. In addition, their appearance was pleasing, so they could be bought and placed by Xie Shirsi's side. Seeing Feng Jiu nod, the beautiful woman smiled softly and said to her daughter, "Since Xiao Jiu said that they are good, then these 2, you can also choose some rough maids." Xie Shirsi didn't understand why her mother asked Feng Jiu, but seeing that her mother agreed, she smiled happily and let the 2 girls stand out first. "Thank you, madam." The 2 little girls hurriedly bowed and thanked her with joy, and then stood aside respectfully. Xie Shirsi picked a dozen more girls and asked them to stand out, then asked her mother, "What about these? Are they good?" The beautiful woman looked at Feng Jiu again. Although she didn't speak, she smiled. Feng Jiu looked at the smile, couldn't help but smile and lower her head, feeling depressed. Why did she keep looking at her? She wouldn't want her to choose again, right? Just as she was thinking, she heard her gentle voice. "Xiao Jiu, help Xiao Shi look at these people." As soon as these words came out, Xiayan's eyes moved slightly. The first time was fine, but there was a second time? This Fengjiu was just a simple and honest boy. What did he have that made his wife treat him differently? He couldn't help but feel curious, and his gaze fell on Fengjiu. Shai Yu and his cousin also felt strange. They looked at their parents, and then looked at Fengjiu without speaking. Fengjiu's scalp went numb from the countless pairs of eyes that were filled with curiosity, inquiry, and doubt. She raised her head and glanced at the beautiful woman. "Go ahead." The beautiful woman smiled gently and motioned for Fengjiu to step forward to choose. Thus, Fengjiu had no choice but to step forward and push a few of the pretty girls back. Finally, only 10 people were left out of the 17 or 18 people. Those people are all very good-looking. Why not? Xia Shirsi asked doubtfully. Her mother said that the servants were also the face of the master, so she had to choose the good-looking ones. She had chosen in this direction, but who would have thought that the best-looking ones would be pushed back by Fengjiu? Fengjiu scratched his head with his hand and revealed a simple and honest smile. He chuckled in his heart. "Little girl, these people haven't even entered the house yet, but they are already throwing coquettish glances at me shyly. What will happen after they enter the house? And I'll listen to Xiao Jiu." The beautiful woman nodded with a smile and looked at her son. "Yutong, you choose some." Chapter 26:05. Fengjiu's mouth twitched when she heard this. What's wrong with his family? Xiayan also smiled when he saw this. Well, I think Xiao Jiu has chosen well. Let him choose the rest. He looked at the 12 people on the side and said to Fengjiu, "There are 12 people here. Pick 8 more. Make 20 people." As soon as he finished speaking, he had the steward bring out another batch of slaves. However, in this batch of slaves, other than men and women, there were also middle-aged men. Therefore, in this batch of slaves, other than the word mixed, some of them had higher cultivation. Fengjiu sighed softly in her heart. She knew that the beautiful woman might want to test her, or to see what kind of person she was. Although she could pretend to be ignorant and choose at will, she didn't. Thinking that she would stay in their family for a while, she also knew that it was useless to keep hiding. What's more, her throat would be better in a few days, and she would have to speak. At that time, she couldn't pretend to be mute and say nothing. Therefore, after the steward changed a batch of slaves, she walked past those people and looked at them one by one. Finally, she picked 4 women and 4 men from the 50 people. Out of the 4 women she had picked out, 2 of them were around 16 or 18 years old. She had prepared them for the beautiful woman, and the other 2 were around 30 or 40 years old. She had written down some questions on a piece of paper that she had prepared beforehand. Therefore, these 2 were going to be the kitchen maids. As for the other 4 men, one was about the same age as Shai Yutong and was going to be his personal servant. The other 2 were about 15 or 16 years old and were going to be errand boys. The last one was a middle-aged man. This person's strength was not the highest among these people, but he exuded integrity between his eyebrows. She was going to use this person as their steward. She felt that this person should have the ability. After the final selection, she also wrote down the arrangements of these people on paper and showed them to the beautiful woman. Since the beautiful woman wanted to see her ability, she naturally had to show it. What's more, it was just the ability to recognize people, which was easy for her. When the couple saw the Fengjiu's arrangement, their hearts were slightly moved. The couple looked at each other and smiled. In the end, the beautiful woman said, "And that's all. You guys wait for me in the carriage. I'll go take care of the things behind." Xie Yin smiled. After speaking to them, he asked the steward to bring those people over. At the same time, he asked the steward to handle the handover. "Mother, are the people Xiao Jiu picked good?" Xie Shirsi hugged her mother's arm and asked curiously. Even Shai Yutong pricked up his ears and listened. Fengjiu, who was sitting outside the carriage, only smiled when he heard their conversation. In the carriage, the beautiful woman smiled gently. Yes, Xiao Jiu has good taste. The people she picked are all suitable. Why don't I see how good his vision is? Shai Yutong snorted. But in his heart, he agreed. At least, when he saw those girls who winked at him, he wanted to punch their eyes swollen. Fortunately, those girls were not selected to enter the mansion. The beautiful woman smiled and did not say much. She just said, "Let's go to the clothing store and make some clothes for the people in the mansion." Chapter 26:06. Who said that Xiao Jio should be with you? The beautiful woman smiled and looked at Feng Jiu, saying, "You will be the chief steward in the mansion in the future. You will be in charge of everything in the mansion." Hearing this, Feng Jiu was stunned. He quickly waved his hand, indicating that he couldn't do it. Shai Yutong stared at him. Chief steward? Him? His eyes fell on Feng Jiu, but he couldn't see what was so good about him. Xie Shirsi blinked and looked at Feng Jiu, and then said to her mother, "But Grandpa said that Xiao Jiu could be a manservant with my brother. That's because there was no manservant in the mansion before. Now it's different," she said softly. When Xie Yin came back, she said to them, "Well, I'll take them back first. If you want to buy anything else, go ahead." "Well, my husband, you can go back first. We'll be home later," the beautiful woman said and put down the curtain. Feng Jiu was sitting on the edge of the carriage. Now seeing this, he nodded to Xie Yin and drove the carriage to the largest cloth store in the city. In front of the cloth store, Feng Jiu stopped the carriage and opened the curtain to let them get down. The first one to get down was Shai Yutong. He jumped down directly and stood beside the carriage to look around. Xie Shirsi also jumped out of the carriage with one hand, just like Shai Yutong. The beautiful woman behind her frowned slightly. "Xiao Shi, you are a girl. You should pay attention to your behavior. My brother also got down like this." She looked back with a smile and said, looking at the cloth store with surprise and joy, "So many beautiful fabrics, wow. There are even clothes made." As soon as her voice fell, she ran directly in without waiting for them. This crazy girl. The beautiful woman helplessly shook her head. Just as she was about to get off the carriage, she saw Feng Jiu reaching out his hand to help her down. She looked at Feng Jiu and gently smiled before reaching out to hold his hand. However, when she held Feng Jiu's hand, her heart slightly trembled. She couldn't help but look at the hand she was holding, and her gaze slightly shifted. After getting off the carriage, the beautiful woman said to Feng Jiu, "You can stop the carriage here. You can also come in and choose." Feng Jiu nodded and followed her in. "Mother, this cloth is so beautiful. I want to use it to make clothes." Xie Shirsi held her mother's hand and said, "If you like it, then buy it." As the beautiful woman spoke, she let them choose. She and Feng Jiu went to the side and picked some cloth for the servants. Then she looked at Feng Jiu and asked, "Xiao Jiu, which one do you like?" Feng Jiu looked around and then went to the side to pick 2 sets of cyan clothes. He pointed at the clothes for the beautiful woman to see. "And this style is not bad. Since you like cyan, then I'll pick some more and have them make more clothes for you." As the beautiful woman spoke, she picked a few more pieces. In the end, she had the servants bring the selected pieces to the counter and let them make clothes according to the size. Feng Jiu looked at her, buying so much, and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He felt that it was the same everywhere. When this woman bought things, it was scary. "Mother, this material is very beautiful. If I make clothes for you, it will definitely look even better." Xie Shirsi carried a piece of silk cloth over. It was a piece of sky blue material with floats on it. Whether it was the texture or the quality, it looked incomparable. Chapter 26:07. "Shopkeeper, I want that piece of ice silk satin." A cold and arrogant female voice called out. Feng Jiu and the rest turned around to look. They saw a beautiful woman dressed in a white veil. She was accompanied by several bodyguards. Judging from their attire and appearance, they should be members of an aristocratic family. Xie Shirsi saw the woman's gaze fall on the cloth she was hugging. She snorted and said, "What ice silk satin? This is the cloth I picked out. I want to make clothes for my mother." As she spoke, she hugged the cloth tightly, as if she was afraid it would be snatched away. The woman in white looked at Xie Shirsi with contempt. Her arrogant gaze swept over the beautiful woman and Fungio. She said, "You don't even know what ice silk satin is. What's the use of buying it?" She walked in step by step until she was in front of Siashursi. She reached out to touch the cloth and said in a soft and arrogant voice, "Ice silk satin is woven from the silk of ice silkworms. When you wear it, flames won't be able to get close to you. Especially in the summer, it will give you a cold feeling." She paused, raised her chin slightly, and glanced at them with arrogance. "This kind of material is not something that anyone can afford. It's none of your business. In any case, I saw it first. My family can afford it." Siashursi was dissatisfied with being looked down upon. She angrily glared at the woman and ran to the counter with the cloth in her arms. "Shopkeeper, I want to buy this as well. I want it to be the most beautiful dress for my mother." When the beautiful woman heard these words, a gentle and happy smile appeared on her face. She rubbed Siashursi's head with a doting expression on her face. After which, she looked towards the white-clothed lady and asked in a warm voice, "Miss, may I know if you have reserved this cloth in advance?" The woman in white was startled. She moved her mouth and looked at the beautiful woman. She only said, "I've already come to look for it several times." "Then did you pay a deposit?" The beautiful woman looked at the shopkeeper and asked. The shopkeeper hesitated for a moment. He looked at the beautiful woman and continued, "No, it's just that Miss Ruan has been here several times. I also told her that there would be a bolt of material coming over in the next 2 days. This material just arrived today, so Madame took a fancy to it. The material was good, but there was only one piece. The Ruan family was a large aristocratic family in the city. The Madame had also said that the clothes would be sent to the Sierra residence after they were done. The Sierra residence was also a large aristocratic family in the city. He couldn't afford to offend either party. So you're saying that this material hasn't been ordered yet. Since we've taken a fancy to it, we should naturally buy it first. Shopkeeper, don't you think this is reasonable?" The beautiful woman's voice was gentle like a spring breeze, causing the mood of those who heard it to change. Fengjiu watched from the side and thought to himself, "No wonder Xie still married her even though she can't cultivate. It seems that she is indeed extraordinary. You dare to steal from me? Do you know who I am?" The woman in white was only 16 or 17 years old. How could she be a match for the beautiful woman? She couldn't keep her cool. The beautiful woman turned around and looked at the woman in white with a gentle smile. She said softly, "I haven't asked for Mrs. name. I'm the third miss of the Ruan family's main branch. I want to buy this material for my mother as a birthday gift." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.